It is Wednesday, November 20th, 2019. It is 6:04 p.m. We are in the Nashua High School North Boardroom, and this is the Human Resources Committee. So taking attendance, Mrs. Timmons is not here. Ms. Porter is here. Ms. Oden is here. Ms. Van Twyver is not here. And we have Ms. O'Gara with us. So we have a quorum.
What time did you say?
6:04, I think. Depends on what clock you look at. Okay, so we only have one thing on the agenda tonight. We just received revised personnel recommendations dated November 20th, 2019. Are there any questions or comments on this? Ms. Oden?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, Ms. O'Gara? No? Okay, all right. So we're going to go straight to our motion to accept the revised personnel recommendations dated November 20th, 2019. So I guess I'll make that motion. Second. And we can just do a roll call. All in favor?
No, we don't need a roll call.
We don't need a roll call. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes? Opposed? No. Abstain? No. So it passes unanimously.
Okay.
All right.
I move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Opposed? No. Okay, so we are adjourned at 6:05. That was a 1-minute meeting. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Good afternoon or good evening. It is 7:01 p.m. on Wednesday, November 20th, 2019, and we are in the Nashua North Boardroom. I'd like to call this meeting of the Nashua Board of Education to order. Mr. Guarino, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Oden?
Here.
Ms. Raymond?
Here.
Mr. Kaufman?
Here.
Mr. Mosher?
I'm here.
Mr. Mosher is joining us by telephone. Are you by yourself tonight, Mr. Mosher?
Certainly am.
Thank you. Ms. Van Twyver?
Present.
Ms. Van Twyver is joining us by telephone. Are you by yourself tonight, Ms. Van Twyver?
I am.
Mr. Guarino is here. Ms. Hohensee?
Here.
Ms. Timmons is not here. Ms. Porter?
Here.
Okay, other attendees, Dr. Mosley?
Here.
Dr. McKinney?
Here.
Ms. Fitzpatrick?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Ms. O'Gara?
Here.
And Mr. Eade?
Here.
And Ms. Scales?
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Guarino. At this time, could you please lead us in the prayer? And Ms. Oden, could you lead us in the pledge this evening? All right. If everyone could please rise.
Participation in our prayer is voluntary. Nashua's Board of Education does not advocate for or condone religion or any specific religion. Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the educational institutions of our beloved city. In our common endeavors, may we find a spirit of unity and understanding which will enable us to face our multiple problems with an objective mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of our fellow citizens. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. This evening, we do not have a recognition or presentation scheduled, so we will get right down to business. First things first is our consent agenda. Does anyone have...
Point of order, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Before we continue, I just think it's off-putting for the clerk to read that statement that the district does not support any specific religion or religious practices. We haven't approved that policy, and I think it's off-putting to make that disclosure at the beginning of a meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hohensee. Okay, consented, yes, Mr. Guarino.
Sure, I'd like to respond to that. We actually discussed this matter and we voted on it. The board agreed unanimously that we would read a statement like that before the prayer. So I would like to remind Ms. Hohensee that she voted for us to say this ahead of time before the prayer, and that's why I do it. And she actually approved it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, consent agenda. Does anyone have any items they would like to be removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
thank you.
On the motion to approve the consent agenda, Ms. Oden? Yes. Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes?
Ms. Timmons? I'm sorry, Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Are there any communications outside of the consent agenda? Seeing none, we are now at the public question comment period limited to items on this agenda. Now, I'm aware that the sign-up sheet hasn't been down there for very long. Were there individuals who wished to sign up who didn't get a chance, or individuals who did sign up? Please come down. Yeah, you raised your hand, ma'am? Okay. So this question comment period is limited to items on this evening's agenda. Oh, you're signing up. Okay. Name and address, but you can simply come down and say it into the microphone at this point. Thank you. So please state your name and your address and then your comments.
My name is Kathy Lambert. I lived in Nashua for 20 years. 5 of my children went through this school. I currently live in Tewksbury, but I'll be back next month.
Oh, okay. And did you have a comment that you wanted to share with us?
I'm here because of a comment made at the last session. Actually, I just wanted it clarified about the bullying in the school. And Superintendent, did you say that nobody had been bullied in the school? Did it? That nobody had led to taking their own life? I'm here to represent my friend Risa, whose daughter took her own life directly as a result of bullying in this school. So I just want that clarified, if that statement was made, because there have been children who have taken their lives. There have been numerous children bullied. Fortunately, my children were raised to defend themselves and help others. So, I don't really feel they were victims of it. But it's a terrible thing, and it's happening. And I think this committee is first and foremost in the war to battle intimidating the kids, by the kids or by the staff. So I just wanted to clarify if that was what was said.
Thank you for sharing that painful and
behind it.
difficult story.
Thank you.
Okay.
Should I stay here? Or?
Nope, this is simply a comment period. It isn't a question and answer period.
So I'll never find out?
Well, I would suggest that you review the minutes on our website.
But if it was said, and I believe it was said, why was it said if it wasn't true?
Okay. Well, I think that's something for us to reflect upon, and I appreciate you bringing it to our attention this evening.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Lisa Brownstein, Nashua. Last board education meeting had a young adult named Julia who talked about a friend of hers who committed suicide because of bullying. That was my daughter Rachel. she was talking about. She was 17 and she was a junior at this school, and she was taking nursing classes at South. I am here because of the fact that I don't want another parent, sibling, friend, or co-worker experience what my family had to go through. Seeing how the discussion of bullying went down the last meeting concerned me, not just for the fact that I had to listen to misinformed on how there were no suicides related to bullying in the school district to which my daughter died from, but how there seems to be a discomfort with the discussion of suicide attempts being a potential result of bullying. I know the school district has a zero tolerance policy, but there is no follow through. I believe that the school has a responsibility to provide a safe and hostile-free environment for all its students in the same manner an employee is required to provide that for an employee. Schools that are aware of bullying and do not stop it need to be held to the same standard. Actually, it needs to be higher since we're all talking about minors and not people in the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Thank you.
Scott Kuchar from Nashua. I had two things I wanted to bring up tonight. One was, I'm wondering, last meeting, when bullying was being talked about a lot, they were talking about getting a task force together. And I'm just hoping that that will be mentioned tonight, that we'll get a status update for that. I was kind of poking at the website today and I couldn't find anything on it. So just interested in what's going on there. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the proposed JBAB, transgender, gender nonconforming student policy I was looking over. And I'm all for protecting students of every walk and color, creed, religion. I get it. I'm all for that. I think it ties in with the bullying issue. My only problem reading this proposal of the policy is it's kind of vague in the defining of transgender. It seems to talk a lot about if the person feels a certain way, and it's kind of vague, like there's no, it's not like if you change your name, right, and you go and you change your birth certificate and your name's changed, right? There's like a cut and dry line in the sand, this has changed thing, right? So the fact that it's kind of vague, I find that a little worrisome in light of, I don't know if people are aware of HB 587 that they passed at the State House last year. I won't get into what that is, but you could look into that. So in light of that bill that they passed, I think we need a better definition and a clear-cut line when we're going to define this. And the other thing I would like to see in here, or I would recommend, is there seems to be no parental involvement in here whatsoever. So you got kids 18 and under, and without the parents' consent, there is the possibility that they could go against their parents' wishes. And with HB 587 on the books, that's a little worrisome to me. That was it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Did anyone else have a comment or question regarding items on this agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we are going to move on to the superintendent's comments.
Good evening, everyone. Couple things. There's certainly a lot going on in the district, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Last year, we received a grant, and I don't know the name of the grant, but what this grant allowed us to do was to actually purchase snacks and treats for the high schoolers here at the north and the south. And so what that allowed us to do during E-Block, kids can come down to Mr. Burns' office and Mr. Rich's office and just have snacks during E-Block. This year, that grant ran out. We did not have, we were not eligible for that grant, and thus we were not able to provide that level of support for our kids. So without hesitation, I reached out to the Nashua Teaching Foundation for some support and an eligibility for the grant to purchase snacks for our kids. Because of what I was seeking, I was not able to secure that, but I just want to acknowledge that without hesitation, Beth Creek and her husband Brad asked me, how much do you need? And I said, I need about $2,000, $1,000 per building, and without hesitation, they donated the money so that we could purchase those snacks for those kids. The letter of appreciation is in your folder, but I really want to publicly thank Beth Creek and her husband for that donation. That was, without hesitation. It was just amazing, and it allowed us to do that. So I just want to say thank you to them and their family. November 13th, Board Member Odom and I attended a citywide collective bargaining session with the city to talk about some creative ways that we can start to look at some ways that we can collaborate with different divisions around healthcare, maybe looking at some incentives. It was a very productive meeting. There's another meeting scheduled on December 4th. I'll keep the board updated on the content and the nature of the meetings, but it was a good first step. On November 15th, if you make reference to the strategic plan, it talks about the safety committee and the steps to start to talk about the phasing in of the safety task force. And this was our first meeting. We had police and fire there, myself, Chris Lassard, and we did what I would call an autopsy on how we were doing with our safety training. We also talked about what had been done so far, the next steps in the training, the feedback that we got from teachers and faculty. Next steps, definitely defining and setting up some more trainings district-wide. Also, I don't want to say too much because then once you say too much, it can be a security issue, but it's also talking about doing a roundtable and doing some training within the building specifically for our faculty when it comes in the event of a catastrophe. That went very, very well. We still have some more I would say discussion around that, but certainly I want to say thank you to the police and fire and to the faculty that participated in that roundtable. I'm very pleased to, again, it's in the strategic plan, but we've also talked about this publicly last year. And this year, I'm pleased to announce that Pamela Davey is going to be our new grant writer. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, she's actually going to be split between the city and the schools. And we're really looking forward to that collaboration. We had a very healthy pool of candidates. Pamela comes to us with a wealth of experience. She will not be starting, she'll be starting in the middle of December because she has some other obligations when she becomes available, and I'll certainly introduce her to the board. We're very excited to work in collaboration with the city and the schools. This is our first venture that we've done this, and certainly there's a lot of grants out there for the city and for the schools, and so we're very pleased to have her come on board and work with us and the city. We'll keep you posted. I want to publicly acknowledge and congratulate Peter Johnson, our Nashua ETV administrator, on October 31st, 2019. The Nashua ETV won first place in the sporting programming for its production of the 2018 North and South Battle of the Bridges football game. We happily joined the Alliance for the Community, Media, and Recognizing Pete. Tom King, John Collins, the games broadcasters, and the Nashua ETV production team for a top-notch broadcasting. Congratulations to those gentlemen, and thank you for all that you do for us. So, For those of you who have been following, and I'm pretty sure it's going to come up again during when we talk about committee work, but I do want to give another plug. On November 21st, which is tomorrow, there's another middle school construction meeting at Maine Dunstable. That meeting starts at 7 p.m. All are welcome to attend the meeting. We also want to encourage the Maine Dunstable parents, community members to go out and go to that meeting to ask questions. And what we did as a school, we also sent out a Blackboard Connect to all of those parents in that region. So again, November 21st at 7 p.m., there will be another meeting on the middle school construction. This 2 weeks ago, I don't have the date, I should have it, I apologize. A committee of us met to talk about class rank and how that affects our students. If you recall, about last year, we had a group of kids come together and talk about class rank, how it had an impact on if it had an impact on college admissions. When you dive down into this level of exploration, you always get the positives and you always get the negatives. You start to understand the culture of the schools, the grading system, the genesis of it. It's always a very healthy discussion. The next steps is to really we're going to try to get some college admissions administrators in to come and talk to us. We're also going to try to get some alumni here as well to talk to our kids to see if it really made a difference or not. So that committee is still up and running. The strategic plan, if you recall last year, that we were talking about making sure that once the plan was approved, I would go out and talk with the faculty and just do like a question and answers. So I'm still doing that. So far, I've covered all of the secondary except for Pennachuck. I have to go back to Pennachuck. I'm now making my way through Charlotte Ave. I've done Charlotte Ave, Fairgrounds Elementary School, and I still have some elementary schools to cover. It's been a great conversation. Teachers have asked great questions. I think the conversation is rich. It's always nice to get that face-to-face feedback. And I actually like to go during the faculty meetings because they do have pretty good snacks. So it's nice. But we've enjoyed it. We're always getting that feedback. I appreciate it. And I said this is just one of many dialogues we're having with the faculty. So if I haven't been to your school yet, I'm coming, and certainly please pile up your questions and let's have that discussion. There's two more things I want to mention, and then I'll stop talking. This is kind of I would say a teaser, but our website is going to be changing at the beginning of the year. So that's in January 1st-ish, 2020. Our website is going to be changing, so you'll hear more information on that, but I'm starting to just give people a heads up and try to plant that seed that our website is going to be changing for the better. You'll like it. I want to thank Stacy Hines and Ian Harvey for their work on that, and you'll get more information on that. But just to give the public and give the board a heads up that that's going to be happening. And finally, as we head into the holiday season, there's the Turkey Bowl that's coming up. It's the 16th annual Turkey Bowl between the North and the South. They will face off for the 16th time. That's on November 27th, 6 p.m. at Stello Stadium. It's very difficult to say who I really want to win and who I really want to lose, so I've come up with the best way to end this. I'm hoping and praying for a 2020 tie. And that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. Oh,
Happy Thanksgiving and holidays to all of those who are going to be with family. That's all.
thank you, Dr. Mosley. For the board response to superintendent's comments, I'll go around, starting with you, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that there's going to be some more conversation about the grading, the competency grading, class rank, and the way the CTE courses are, I guess I'll just use the word weighted toward the GP. Would that be the correct word, George? So that was something I had asked for the agenda tonight. I'd just like to remind the superintendent and the board that those conversations should be done in the curriculum committee. They should not be held outside the public domain. It's very important that the board understand the subtleties about the grading. This last time when one of our directors brought it forward, I had not known that the weighting really determined the the CTE classes are weighted lower than the AP, the advanced placement classes. So the kids who are really struggling to improve their and maintain their high scores take the AP classes. They don't take CTE classes, even if it might be in engineering where they might want to go. So please make sure that those conversations happen in public, and it might be the student representatives who are going to have to ensure that that happens. Just a suggestion to my student friends here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Ms. Hohensee?
Thank you. I believe the student reps are going to be turning over it this year, so it'll be the new ones that'll have to follow up. But I too agree that these discussions should be in public. They affect all our students. It's just wrong to shut down discussion into these little task force that we don't know when the meetings are being held. We don't know who's on the committees. There are no minutes of this, and we're just going to get the outcome. This is not open government. This is just a travesty. I'd also like to apologize to the parents that came here tonight to talk about the bullying that led to suicide. I think it's disappointing that there was no apology made for them for the incorrect statements that were made at this last board meeting, and I just wanted to apologize for them because I know there's a link. I know it's important, and it is hypocrisy to have a no-tolerance policy that's not enforced or, inequitably enforced. It's something that we should have had a discussion on it by now, and it's getting kicked down the road.
Thank you, Ms. Hohensee. Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
do you have
I
a response?
listened to Dr. Mosley, and I tend to agree with much of what he said. But I have an opinion on class rank. I think it's an archaic way to look at where you stand in a school and the admissions to colleges. I think that everything should be proposed on your ability and your performance in the school, not necessarily on where you stand as a rank in a class. I mean, that's an archaic way to do it. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. This is very, it's a very touchy subject and a very emotional subject, suicide. And an apology is owed, but if what had happened was someone on this board said suicide is epidemic. That was the expression.
No.
And Dr. Mosley had said, let's be careful not to be hyperbole, exaggeration about it. So I think an apology is owed, and it's a very serious subject, and we take it very serious what happens to our children in our district. And Reese's daughter, I knew Rachel, and it affects all of us. It affected me. It affected the whole community. So I just want to, I'm sorry that you have to be put through this again. But I do want you to know that we have to be careful. We definitely need to talk about it. You're 100% correct. But we can't spread fear, because a lot of parents are afraid, and rightly so. But suicide is not epidemic, but it is a problem. And if you look at the meeting minutes, that's what was said, and you want an explanation of what happened, and that's what happened.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guarino. Ms. Van Twyver, do you have a response to the superintendent's comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Porter? No. Ms. Oden?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Creeks for donating that money for snacks. That was very generous of them. I want to commend Pete and his staff for being recognized for their work in broadcasting the football games. And I think, Ms. Bernstein, to you, I want to say thank you for coming tonight. And your friend who came, I know this must be a terrible situation for you. And I'm sorry, but I do want to thank you for coming and reminding us of what happened in your family. I know a lot of families go through it and they don't talk about it, but for you to come here and say what you said tonight, I certainly do appreciate it. And I give you a lot of credit for doing that. Thank you. I'm sure your daughter would be proud of you.
Sorry, I got a little emotional there. I'd like to echo Ms. Oden's statements. I was very moved by you sharing your experience this evening, and your friend as well. And I think that it's important that we get to the bottom of what's going on. And I don't think it's anything that is specific to Nashua necessarily, but Nashua needs to look at our own policies and how we handle these things. But I do think that kids are interacting with each other and the world differently than they did when I was a kid. And I think we need to take that into consideration when we're crafting policies and ways that we deal with these things. So I appreciate being reminded of that. In regards to Dr. Mosley's comments, I want to thank Ms. Creek for her donation. It's no small thing to make sure our kids are fed, and I think we do a good job in the lower grades, and then the poor high schoolers who are growing at rapid rates and starving all the time kind of get left behind. So I'm so thankful for that donation. I also just wanted to echo Dr. Mosley's invitation to the public to come to the Joint Special School Building Committee tomorrow night at 7 at Maine Dunstable. It will be another public information session, so people can come with questions, and they'll have big printouts of maps and ideas and such that are a little bit easier to see and comprehend than the little map on the screen. So I do invite everyone to attend. And that is all for me. Student member of the board comments. Ms. Scales, did you want to begin?
I did. Homecoming. Homecoming is November 26th here at Nashua High School North in the cafeteria. Registration for winter sports close the first day of each tryout. And for those who need waivers, they have to be handed in by 2 o'clock on the second day of tryouts. And also, the Nashua North's music department presents Once Upon a Mattress, which is being shown November 22nd at 7 p.m., November 23rd at 7 p.m., and November 24th at 2 p.m. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Scales. Mr. Eid?
Similar comment. The winter athletics registration for sports is open, and you already said that. So, and homecoming for South is also on November 26th, and tickets are $35 if you get them during lunch, either tomorrow or anytime before November 26th, and they're $40 at the door.
Thank you, Mr. Eid. Okay.
One more.
Oh, go ahead.
And if you paid for your senior package, then that means you do not have to order the tickets. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Scales. Thank you, Mr. Eid. All right, moving right along. The next item on our agenda is the Committee on the Budget. We have some updates for the board regarding the alderman's movements towards the middle school project. And in your packets, you'll find R19184, R19185, and also we got a letter, which everyone should have in their packets, R19191. And these are all relative, I'm sorry, I've confused two together. We have two things. We have the state adequacy grants, which is R19184 and 185. And then secondarily, not on the agenda, but we received a memorandum regarding R19191 regarding the middle school project. So let's stick to, let's stick to the R19, 184, and 185 at this time, and we'll talk about the bonding during the JSSBC portion. Sorry, Dr. Mosley, I got myself all excited for stuff down the road.
Okay.
So if you or Mr. Donovan could care to help us understand.
Point of order.
Yes.
The Budget Committee has not met. I mean, there is no Budget Committee right now, really.
Correct.
So why didn't I would move to send this to the Finance Committee, where we can discuss it in the proper manner. I believe it's incorrectly on the agenda for a Budget Committee that doesn't exist to take action. We should move this to Finance. That would be my motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Any other discussion? No?
Well, I think that's where it belongs. We don't have a committee of budget. We convene that usually in the February-March timeframe.
Okay. I will say that I put this under budget because it directly affects our budget, and so to me, that was the logical place to put it. If we want to discuss it under finance, we can. However, Mr. Kaufman, you were the one who asked for an update regarding the state adequacy, so if we send it to finance, you won't get your update this evening.
Oh, that's fine. I'd rather have a thorough discussion about it in committee than a partial discussion about it tonight, because we know we can't get into the details of it. The chair is very conscious about not having detailed discussions. You prefer to have them in committee, very kind of paraphrasing yourself. So I believe this is a discussion worth having. I have something to hand out, so if the board chooses to have the discussion at the board level tonight, I do have a handout, but I think it would be better served in the Finance Committee. So that's why I made my motion.
Thank you. I'm going to suggest that any discussion be put on hold until the Budget Committee meets to discuss the grant. At this point, we are simply letting the board know what the city has done thus far. Mr. Donovan, you were waving at me. Also, Ms. Oden.
Yes, so just these R19-185, this is a resolution that had its first reading earlier this month at the Board of Aldermen. This is then going to be discussed on November 25th at the Board of Aldermen. And if you note, if you look at the resolution, this is the current resolution to use these funds. These are excess one-time funds that we're receiving from the state. There has been some discussion around these, but I think maybe there should be, I don't know if we should just wait until December because something may take place at the Board of Aldermen that
will have an impact on us, basically.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I mean,
Special meeting. Maybe a special,
Yes, that would be.
maybe a special meeting to discuss it in a timely manner to give full voice to it.
Yes.
And we can do that within the deadline constraints of the alderman.
Yes, my purpose was to let you know that this exists, when the aldermen would be discussing it, and then I would, after the aldermen have finished what they do, then we would call a special budgetary meeting. Whether that's in December or January really depends on the aldermen, because I believe they have to have another vote. So, Ms. Oden, you had something to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I see no harm in you bringing up tonight, seeing where the entire board is the Budget Committee. It's made up of the Committee of the Whole, so I don't have a problem with you bringing this up tonight at all.
Okay. Dr. Mosley?
Yeah, just in terms of timing, I mean, the meeting's on the 25th, which is actually Monday. So there isn't enough real time to call a special meeting.
Okay. We do have a motion on the floor to send this to Finance. I suggest that we go ahead and vote on that motion.
I'd like to make one comment, if I may.
Yes, Ms. Hohensee.
If we have a special, it would be after they allocate the money.
Yes.
But then, once we get the money, I don't think the Board of Aldermen can dictate how we spend it. So it's something that this board needs to discuss on repurposing the money that we get for what the best interests of our children are. So sending it to finance, since we're not really getting the budget committee alive till next year, would be the appropriate place. Monday, they will pass it or not, and then we could begin a discussion on the anticipated funds in finance.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Howensey. Okay, call the roll, please, Mr. Guarino.
On the motion to send the resolution R-19, 184, and 185 to Finance and Operation, Ms. Oden?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
No.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
No.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4 noes and 4 yeses. Motion fails.
Okay. All right, well, I really had nothing further to say about this matter except to let the board know and let them know that the Board of Aldermen will be taking this up on 11/25, and of course the public is welcome to attend. Yes, Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I have something I'd like to hand out to the board. It is a copy of a document I received from the governor's office. It's entitled New State Aid for the FY 2021 biennium. And I'll hand this out, but let me first say that Nashua got 3 different pools of money, one of them in one-time education infrastructure grants at $1,464,192. My whole premise of having this discussion is to get that full amount from the aldermen. They've skimmed roughly $500,000 from us, and we need it bad. And I want to speak to the need in a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. I will say it is not our practice to discuss handouts because we don't have 3 days to review them. I'm also going to request that you send this to Tara so that she can include it with the meeting documentation, all the packet information that she posts on the website.
That's why I asked her to go to finance, so it would have adequate conversation.
I understand what you're saying. Mr. Donovan?
Yes, the number that Mr. Kaufman is discussing, it's not the correct number. That was a sheet that was put out by the state. That was not the amount of money given to the city of Nashua, so it's not an accurate starting point.
I agree.
That's not the right number. That was a sheet, that was not the amount that was approved and sent back to our city, so that's just an incorrect number. Just want to...
Oh, that's, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Kaufman.
So that's the purpose of having a discussion. I was under the impression, and actually previously, a month or 2 ago, Ms. Raymond echoed a number that was very close to this at one point in time. And then I got validation from the governor's office today saying that these funds have already been released to the city and that these were the allocations. Now, what the city did is what the city did. I'm objecting to what they did. I wanted this board to take a stand and ask for the $1.46 million. And obviously, the board doesn't have the will to do that.
Mr. Kaufman, I would appreciate if you could refrain from making inflammatory statements. Secondarily...
Well, that's a fact, isn't it?
If you look at R-19-184, you'll see the actual numbers that the city received from the state and how the state dispersed them. So the state dispersed $1.828365 million in municipal aid, $2.168978 in state adequacy aid, and $737,294 in state catastrophic aid for special education. Now, it's been a while since I've done math, but I come to around $2.9 million. So that's quite a bit different than what you're saying. And if you look at R-19-185, that's the number that they have there, 2.9. Now, the aldermen are discussing on 1125 how they want to disperse that 2.9 into various accounts. That's where our discussion ought to be had if we would prefer that the aldermen not spend $1 million towards the general fund, towards capital improvements to do the middle school project. That would be a discussion to have. If we don't want them to spend $900,000 in the general contingency fund, that's a discussion to be had. However, I understand that the aldermen have reasons for this, and it's worth it for us to go listen to their discussion and make our voices heard on 1125. Okay, 7 p.m. at the aldermanic chambers. So the number is 2.9 million. Thank you. I have nothing further on this topic at this time. When we get the actual disbursement from the city, then I will request a special meeting of the Budget Committee to talk about how to spend it, and I will be requesting from administration some suggestions. I'm sure we all have our own suggestions too. I could spend $2.9 million on the school in a heartbeat. Okay, moving on. Committee on Finance and Operations, Ms. Oden.
Okay, we had a meeting on November 12th. I have 2 motions to bring forward. First one is the recommendation to have EEI finalize the investment grade audit and provide 15 and 20-year lease options.
Okay.
Second.
Oh, did you second?
Ms. Porter beat me
Porter
to it.
second? Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to discuss your motion?
Mr. Donovan, I'm going to ask Mr. Donovan to go into this.
Sure. We put out an RFP back a few months ago, probably close to a year ago at this point. We chose EEI as this was a way to look at a way to save energy in our facilities. EEI was the chosen candidate. They then put together a preliminary audit, shared that with us, and then we started discussing ways to potentially finance the improvements to save energy. It basically came down to 2 different ways, one which would be a bond. We'd have to go through the Board of Aldermen. Another would be through a lease that we could do through our operating budget. So at the meeting last week, they discussed the various savings. They gave us options on a 20-year lease. They are now going to go back and firm up their plan, which will show the savings. And they will show us 15 and 20-year options if we choose to go the lease route. So this will probably come to fruition sometime early next calendar year. But it's just an update on the process.
Thank you. Ms. Oden made a motion to have EEI finalize the audit and provide those. Will we have to have another motion when they come back with the options on which one we choose?
Definitely.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Kaufman?
What we did in finance was ask the vendor to kind of complete the due diligence piece that we were looking for so that the new board would have, they won't have to wait on information pretty much. They'll have options to act on how they choose rather than having to wait a few other months. So the intent is that finance will receive recommendations or information from the vendor. I would say that the finance committee, could be even the December finance committee, could move this thing forward or not, and then the board would act on it late in December or January. Probably should wait until January, the new board anyway. That would be the best thing to do. The only thing I want to say about it is the going with a lease option. It could be a 15 or 20-year lease that we drive out of the operating budget. And I think it's okay in my mind to do leases for property 2 or 3 years out or equipment or services. But I have reservations about a 20-year lease because it's almost $7 million over the long haul. So plus we're asking for $120 million for bonding. I think that's too much debt for us to ask the city to do.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman.
Comment?
Yes, Mr. Mosier.
Yeah, I have looked at the thing here very carefully, and yes, I like to get the finalize the investment grade audit to provide 15 and 20-year lease options. This way here, when the new board does convene, they will have the information right there as to what the solar thing is going to be like and how it's going to be financed and what the options are to finance it, whether it be through a bond or the lease. Both offer some very good areas for thought, but that will not be decided upon until we have the final numbers and everything else, all the rest of the data that's going to be provided, which will be then up to the new board to decide on it. So I say that yes, we should finalize the audit and provide and get the provision of the 15 and 20-year lease, because in either way we go, there's going to be some cost involved, but then the city as a whole is looking to use this company also for their facilities, for the fire departments, the fireplace, the police department, and whatever other facilities they want to stack on solar. So if they are looking at it, I think we should be doing the same thing as well. Why close the door on this thing? Let's go and do it now, get it over with, and then it's up to the new board to look at it again.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, could you please call the roll, Mr. Guarino?
Sure. On the motion, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes?
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a second motion to recommend the purchase two burnishers and one scrubber from Cleanorama for $18,781.67, coming from account 91.1.222620-71999.
Second.
Okay. Would you like to speak to your motion, Ms. Oden?
Well, they're machines to clean the floors, and therefore, I believe it's Maine Dunstable.
Okay.
And I believe the ones they're replacing are well over 10 years old. Is that what we were told? So these are necessary.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Did you have a comment, Ms. Hohensie?
I'm just wondering, don't they, can they use these between buildings, or are they used that often that each building needs their own?
Mr. Donovan?
Yes, each building needs their own. They're used weekly basis.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Okay, seeing no other comments or questions, go ahead, Mr. Guarino.
On the motion, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yep.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes?
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
And I guess I would like to finish up. If anybody's interested, we have 3 openings for crossing guards. So we have one up at Pennachuck. We have one on, where's my paper here? Up near, one for Ledge Street, I believe. And there's one other one. Do you have your list there? I can't find mine. I wrote on it, and I have
Yes, they're Broad Street, right near the
it.
school.
That's right.
at Upstone and Carmine and Elm Street in front of the Elm Street School. Those are the openings.
And I think that one's in the afternoon, the Elm Street one. So if anybody is interested, we do have openings for crossing guards, and I know it's not high pay, and it breaks up your whole day, but certainly it's worthwhile.
Absolutely. Our children need it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oden. Mr. Kaufman?
As a member of the committee, I just want to point out we did receive a presentation last time about Chromebooks, and I think this should get visibility at the board. We didn't take any action in committee, so there's no formal motion attached to it. But we were informed by the Assistant Director of IT that we have 2,000 Chromebooks that will essentially go through an end-of-life process beginning in June. And we don't have a technology plan that deals with that, and the budget money, we're short $400,000 to $600,000 right now just on textbooks we wanted earlier in the year, or support materials, I guess I should say. And now we have this exposure to nearly $450,000 to $500,000 for potential purchase of 2,000 Chromebooks. So just wanted everybody to understand that that's on the radar. It came to committee, but doesn't come here, but I thought that you should all know about it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. That is vital information for our budget season, and interesting information, seeing as we have some money coming to us from the state in a one-time adequacy aid. Okay. Ms. Oden, did you have anything else?
No, basically that's it for tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Our next meeting is December 10th.
December 10th. Thank you very much. All right, Committee on Policy, Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to approve policy EBCB, fire safety, as presented.
Second.
This policy was in committee, and then we had brought it to the full board, but we had taken out incandescent lights and we had to put them back. We had to put its prohibition back in again because it's part of the code, and that's all explained in a letter by Mr. Lasad and also by the fire department.
Thank you. Mr. Kaufman?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that LED bulbs should be used in place of incandescents, and I'm absolutely in favor of that for lots and lots of reasons. But my question, the LEDs become, we replace the incandescents when they burn out, is my question. So I would think it would be a very large expenditure to the district to replace all incandescent bulbs with LED bulbs as a proactive maintenance thing. And my request for clarification is, are we to replace any incandescents? Is the requirement to replace incandescents now with LEDs, or can you wait until they burn out and just do that in a normal maintenance thing? I'm left with a question.
Mr. Guarino?
Thank you. As far as the incandescent goes, it was already prohibited to use incandescents, so we have not been using them. What happened was this policy had some other changes to it, and that was the prohibition on incandescents has been in there for a while. That's there's already been, I don't think this isn't going to require us to do some mass changing of incandescent lights because it was already prohibited. And what happened was when this came to the full board, one of the members had saw it and said, why are we prohibiting them? And we didn't realize that it was in the code. But this policy was approved in 2017 and 1980. So they've been prohibited since 2017 at least. So.
And I'd just like to add, I'm aware that the fire marshal goes through the buildings and I'm seeing some head shaking from educators who are familiar with the fire marshal going through the buildings, and he makes people aware if and when there are any changes that need to be made, and then he follows up to make sure those changes are made. So we take fire safety very seriously. Are there any other questions or comments regarding our fire safety policy? Seeing none, I think we can go ahead and call the roll.
On the motion, Ms. Oden? Ms.
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0. Our next item is policy JBAB, transgender and nonconforming students as presented. I move to approve proposed policy JBAB as presented.
Second.
This policy was discussed at the committee level, and it was vetted through council, and it's consistent with state law.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. When I saw these policies come through, I was confused because I thought discrimination at all levels was already addressed by previous and existing policies. So I really struggle with the need for specific policies. I don't understand why this content wasn't added to existing policies about discrimination. And I would like to echo the comment from one of the parents tonight about parental involvement, notification, and recourse complaints, or which seems to be not part of this policy.
Okay. I'm confused about what you mean by recourse. I mean, in the policy, it says students and families, it says parents are encouraged to discuss with building administrators, but I don't understand where you're going with recourse. And then I think Ms. Fitzpatrick has the answer to your first part of that question.
Okay.
We had a meeting with Tom. Oh, can you hear me?
Nope.
We had a meeting with Tom Clausen, and he was the one that said that these should be standalone policies, because I actually asked him in terms of the one for staff, if we could include it in what we already had, and it was his recommendation that they be standalone.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Hohensee?
I would just like the assurance, and I think it should be in the policy, that if a student, a minor, has a change in mind, that's not withheld from the parent. Because what you're saying is the child can change his gender, his name, and that would be on the record. So if a parent's going to get the child's records, would the parent even know where to look? I mean, how are they tied? I mean, there's some legal complications in here, and I just want the reassurance that the parents, who are fiscally responsible and in every other way responsible for the student, that they're informed so they can help the child in this process. And I don't see that in the policy.
It's an interesting discussion, and I was in the team with our attorney, Tom Clausen, when we were discussing this policy. And it's an interesting discussion, because parents are fiscally responsible for students and fiscally responsible for their own children, but children also have some medical privacy when it comes to these types of issues, when it comes to anything regarding sex and sexuality. So we have to be very careful how we address these things. There are also specific privacy laws and ethical considerations if you're talking about anything having to do with mental health services for minors. Those also have special legal protections where we could not we can't interfere, we can't insert ourselves into those situations. And I understand this makes many parents uncomfortable. I can't say as a parent that I love the idea that my child can have some things that I don't know every detail about. But I will say that that in these sensitive matters, this policy is regarding parents and students and families who are coming to the district, not coming outside the district, coming to administration, saying, we're transitioning, we have transitioned, wherever they are in the range, and asking administration to be aware of that and having ongoing discussions about making sure that the administration and the district is meeting that child's specific needs. This is not about us inserting ourselves into the process. So go ahead.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and I understand that, but I'm saying I think it's vague in terms of helping parents clarify. If you want to say parents may be excluded, put it in there. If you're going to say a child up to pubescence, the parent will be involved, and then after pubescence or something, whatever the criteria are, put it in there so a parent knows in advance what the expectations are of the district and what the family's expectations, so they can deal with this. It shouldn't be a surprise. It shouldn't be something that, oh, I never knew that, that's what these policies are for, to help parents understand the process. And I'm seeing a lot of questions. We had questions tonight. I'm not seeing clarity.
Okay.
And that's what I'm asking for.
All right. Thank you for your feedback, Ms. Hohensee. Is there any other comments or questions? I don't see any other comments or questions. In that case, I think you can go ahead and call the roll, Mr. Guarino.
On the motion to approve policy JBAB, Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
No.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee,
No.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
the motion carries. I have 5 yeses, 3 noes.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Guarino, if you could indulge me, I did want to mention one of the people who came to comment today, who had questions and thoughts on this policy, wanted to let us know that we should consider it in light of HB 587. And for those who don't know what that is the bill that prohibits conversion therapy in New Hampshire. And I don't think that there is any intersectionality between this policy and that bill. So.
Okay, our next item is policy ACA, which is transgender and nonconforming staff. So I move to approve proposed policy ACA, transgender and nonconforming staff, as presented.
Second.
Okay. This motion is similar to the previous motion, except that it is for staff.
I do have a comment. I just want people to know, staff and students alike, that these policies are simply affirming the district's existing practice of being accepting of people as they are. And I think that that's important. Not just tolerating, but we accept people as they come to us. So that's all. Any other? I don't see any other hands. Oh, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I think it would be helpful, especially for many people, probably including myself, who I would get my pronouns wrong on the first day, okay? And there's a third paragraph down. It talks about this involves more than a casual declaration of gender identity or expression, but does not require but it does not necessarily require a medical diagnosis. I think it would be helpful for staff members as well as the public who may come in contact with staff members to understand what criteria is generally accepted regarding gender identity, and which states something that's what constitutes casual or something that is more than casual, and how do you determine that, and what is is there a demarcation line so people can understand and be accepting of acceptance, or find themselves in a conflict because of lack of understanding and clear identification of boundaries? And like I said, the pronouns, I mean, I've had conversations with one of my friend's daughters, and she's 14 years old. She understands all this, and I still don't get it. So that's why I think there needs to be something else in here around guidelines, because, I mean, we're not in New York State, but down there, I believe they've, you can be prosecuted for not getting pronouns right. And I'd hate to see something like that extend and find its way into the school district, because people are not politically correct or informed, and I don't think that burden should be on everyone without the school district providing some guidance, and I think it needs to be in here. And then my same comment about, no disrespect to Mr. Clausen, but I would prefer these things to be in one policy where discrimination is addressed all one place rather than separate.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. There's a lot to unpack there. And I think the first thing is that it is not our place to determine someone else's boundaries. They get to determine their own boundaries. They get to determine how much or how little they disclose of who they are at any given time. Regarding pronouns, this is a matter of common courtesy and respect. If someone says, I would prefer that you call me, if I said, my name is Heather, but I'd prefer that you call me Joe, politely, you guys would be like, that's unusual to me, but okay, I'll go with it, And I think that this is no different. We encourage, and frankly, I think we can require our staff to treat people with dignity and respect, and that includes calling them by the name or pronoun by which they ask to be called. Now, are we human? Do we make mistakes? Sure. But there's a difference between making a mistake and being deliberately disrespectful to someone. And I really hope that we don't have people on board who would behave in that manner. Did anyone else have any other comments?
I just have one quick observation.
Yes.
We are not New York State. They are much different than New Hampshire or Nashua, for that matter. And another thing is that I don't think we have to worry about pronouns, and we don't have to run a flag up on the flagpole to let people know what we are. I think that Heather was absolutely correct, and if she wants to be called Joe, fine, so be it.
Okay, I don't, just for the record.
Heather?
It was a hypothetical. Go ahead.
I think that the policy as it stands, and Mr. Carson was absolutely correct, and I urge the passage.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Do we have any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, Mr. Guarino, go ahead.
On the motion to approve policy ACA, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 5 yeses and 3 noes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Our next policy is policy JICA, Student Dress Code. I move to approve policy JICA, Student Dress Code as presented.
Second.
Okay. This is a way to be fair and equal across genders as far as giving students guidance for their dress code when they come to school. You can.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Raymond, would you like to elaborate more on that?
Sure. This is something that I brought to the administration and to policy committee because I feel very strongly about it. We have 18 schools, and we have 18 different interpretations of what appropriate dress means for schools. And I walked into a school last spring, summer, and there was a do's and don'ts of summer attire, and it was all female clothing. And I let it go, but it has been percolating, and it really bothers me. And it bothers me as a mother of a young daughter that girls frequently are held to account to the behavior of others, and I don't think that that's okay. So I did some research, and there is I got most of this policy from a district down in Virginia who's had a lot of luck with it. People will note on the proposed policy, there's a little non-gender child there, and it makes it very easy for people to see what is okay and what's not. And we're asking for clothing that is considering the health and safety and hygiene of all of our students. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It also allows for us to make sure that we don't have hate speech or offensive language on our clothing, and administrators will still have the authority to deem certain items inappropriate on a case-by-case basis. And I have complete confidence that that will be a rare occurrence. So, Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you. I just want to be clear. It says here that they don't want the clothing to depict hate speech for religious affiliation, but will a student be allowed to wear a shirt that indicates a positive note on a religious theme or a political theme? Because that's not clear.
I would say yes. It says you can't do hate speech. So
Okay.
I would imagine that is, negativity towards a particular group.
Right.
But certainly to say
positive to your own affiliation, your own political or religious affiliations, those would be allowed. That's all.
There's nothing here about prohibiting anything political or religious.
That's why I wanted it on the record.
Go ahead, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. Thank you. Two suggestions for language. First of all, I'm happy to see a policy like this. As substitute teacher, you really don't know. So now that there's a policy years back, I don't know what they're doing now for training. So I think this is going to be very helpful to everybody, including parents. So they'll have they have something to look at. A couple of things. Should this be included in the student handbook? Might be something to be considered, so people have students know it's given more visibility than just buried in all our policies. I would make a recommendation that all the mays, clothing may not, that the word may be changed to shall. We've had this conversation in policy over the years. You're either requiring something or you're not. May gives a little too much wiggle room and lacks the emphasis I believe this policy intends to put forward. The other thing, so I would recommend we change all the mays to shalls. And then there's a line item here about sunglasses may not be worn inside the building unless medically necessary, and I would add and pre-approved. So the principal or perhaps guidance, or at least the, I'll say homeroom teacher, the advisory teacher knows, so that it's on the record, so the student doesn't get into trouble.
Okay.
So I'd move to change the word may to shall and add and pre-approved to the line that begins with sunglasses.
Oh, at the end, okay. Do you have a second?
Second.
Mr. Corino, when you're ready.
I have a response. The intent of this policy is to provide guidance for students, staff, and parents. So when you use the word shall, you take it's no longer, I guess, guide. It's a policy, it's a pronouncement. The other thing is the administration. Administration in each school reserves the right to determine what constitutes appropriate dress. And again, you're defeating that in the last paragraph. So I really don't think we need to change may to shall. I think it was fine the way it was.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments? Ms. Oden?
Excuse me, yes, thank you. I'm looking at the diagram, and I understand you're looking for it to be general. It's neutral, but I'm looking, should a girl be wearing a skirt or a dress? It should be 3 or 4 inches from the crotch?
Yes, inseam.
That's quite a change, I believe, from the policy they have now.
There is no policy now.
Well, the schools have policies.
Right. Currently, a lot of the schools are using put your arms down, which is great and all, unless you have particularly short or long arms, and it's, not really. If you're shopping for a young girl, you know that it's very difficult to find things that are longer than a 3 or 4 inch inseam. It's very difficult, especially when you're talking about shorts.
Well, I see shorts a little bit different than a dress or a skirt, and maybe it's my age. But I know I've been in the high school when a student was wearing a skirt this short, and the principal said, please make sure your skirt's at the right height, and she pulled it down. Because she had pulled it up, it was one of those scrunchy things. So I'm just wondering if you got any feedback from high school administration or middle school administration on this.
Ms. Fitzpatrick?
When we were getting the policy ready for the packet, one of the things that we did was go through the high school and middle school handbooks. And there were some slight changes which were discussed at the policy subcommittee, that there had been slight changes based on what was in the handbooks already. So there were so those were compared to what we had, and there were minor changes made to what Ms. Raymond brought to policy. And so those things were considered at the time. The other point I think that's important to make is that the administration gets to determine. So if there is a student who the administration says, do you have some spandex shorts or something you can put on underneath that skirt, that they have the right to say that to a student.
But if it's within the policy as it is here, if this is the policy, what gives them the right to do that?
Well, I think that we're here for learning. We're not here for policing people's appearance. And I would suggest that administration consider the impact of clothing on the learning environment, not their own personal values. So, Mr. Kaufman.
I have a question about the last paragraph. Parents will be called if appropriate clothing is not available or the student refuses dress code appropriate clothing. What's the consequence? Will a student be sent home? Will they go to a detention? Or, what happens if alternative clothing is not available, the parent cannot bring it in, the student doesn't have it?
That's a good question. I would imagine that the same thing that happens now, the parent is called to either come pick them up or bring appropriate clothing. Ms. Scales? Oh, no, Ms. O'Gara and then Ms. Scales.
I think some of the schools have clothing that the kids could wear in that case.
I was pretty much going to say what Ms. O'Gara just said.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ms. Scales. Dr. Mosley?
I don't know how much of an issue this really is, and I'm just asking, I think back to Ms. Oden's point, I I would be curious to get the feedback from administrators at the high school level, direct feedback, not just looking at handbooks. I also recognize that sometimes kids, when they leave the house, they look very different in school as well. I think when we're getting into 3-4 inches, I don't see how this is, I don't know how we enforce that. I think we put the administrators in a very difficult situation where we create absolutes. So I would just, I think there's a deeper conversation that needs to happen here. We also live in New Hampshire. With that said, it's cold here, and there's a lot of bundling up for about 10 to 10 months here. I mean, 8 to 10 months, right? No, 10 months, right? 8 to 10 months, so to speak. So I'm just curious how this all kind of fits in, and certainly I'm bemused by the rigidity of the policy.
Mr. Eid?
I think at a lot of the schools and at the high schools, the general rule of thumb, no pun intended, is that it's like arm length, like the tip of your fingers. And so the shift to 3 inches is like, it's kind of a big shift. And we want people to be able to express themselves in the way that they want to, but also in a way that's conducive to the learning environment. It's like not distracted, so that kids are focusing like on their studies, and that's the first priority for them.
So who would be distracted by clothing that is 4 inches long? Would it be the girls wearing the clothing, or would it be the boys? Because in my personal
Both.
opinion, boys ought to be taught to learn how to focus. That's a life skill.
I agree with you. I think it's both.
I think it's both because, like, as a female, like when I see ladies in my school who are wearing dresses that barely cover them up, like it's like, oh wow, like why are they wearing that? You know, like it distracts me, but in a different way. I don't know how it distracts guys. I'm not a male, but I think it should be conducive to the learning environment too.
I think it's both.
There's appropriate dress for a place and a time, you know. And
Agreed.
The place to be, and school's not that place, you know.
Mr. Kaufman?
It seems like there's a lot more conversation about this wanting to be had. Perhaps we can send it back to the committee.
I would say one thing, that this was on the committee, and the only people who showed up were Mr. Guarino and Ms. Fitzpatrick and myself. So I'm surprised at the lack of attendance at policy committee, and then now this robust discussion here at the board level. I would suggest that if people feel strongly about a proposal at a committee level, that they attend the committee. Mr. Guarino.
I just want to ask Mr. Kaufman what his amendment was. I know that he said that he wanted to change may to shall. What was the second part of that?
The sentence that talked about sunglasses. Sunglasses may not, I wanted to add 2 words to the end of that sentence. So, and pre-approved, unless medically necessary and pre-approved.
And pre-approved.
Okay. Ms. Oden?
I was at another meeting the night of the policy committee meeting that this came up, but I would like to move to table this in order to get some feedback from our secondary administrators, as well as any opinions from our elementary principals, because I know, having taught elementary school, it comes up at the elementary school occasionally, and maybe from the student senate. I think we need a little bit more bottom up rather than top down on this. That's my opinion. Thank you. So I'd like to move to.
I got some comments.
Okay, wait, 1 second, Mr. Mosier. Is there a second for tabling?
We already have a motion on the floor.
Oh, that's right, you can't move to table when
Now,
there are motions on the floor. There's a motion and an amendment.
So
And then,
I am willing to withdraw my motion to modify in pursuit and support of Mrs. Oden's to table and get more feedback on it. So I'm just trying to move this along because we're getting
caught in the weeds.
Yeah.
Can a motion to table happen after a motion to approve? I think you'd have to withdraw. And Mr. Mosier had a comment, and then we'll go back to the discussing of tabling versus
Mr.
approving.
Mr. Kaufman withdrew his amendment.
Conditionally.
I withdrew my second with the
Okay.
same condition.
Right, and we still have a motion to approve the policy.
Mr. Kaufman's withdrawal of his amendment is conditioned upon you also withdrawing so that
Oh.
it can be tabled.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Mosier, go ahead.
Yeah, you guys, you're out in the woods on this policy. I raised, 4 girls and a boy. And as far as the school dress was concerned, my wife was very astute on what the girls wore and how well they wore it. And I think that, all of the parents should be aware of their children and what their children are wearing, what is exposed and what is not exposed. And however, I got some other things that my daughters told me is that the girls will come out from the home and they will be dressed very well. And they get on the bus or they get to the school, and the first thing they do is they shorten their skirts by rolling them up at the top to expose more legs and get more boys' attention because, oh, that guy is cute. I want to meet him, but they go about in these devious things like makeup and shortening the skirts on purpose, even though Mom has looked at it when they left. They said, oh, it was okay, but then when they got out the door, bingo, something else happened. It's like a little something in their brain just switched on and something else switched off. And I think that if we keep on going the way we're going, we're going to be getting a lot of nowhere. But we have to be aware that the kids are going to do what their kids want to do as far as their dress is concerned. Mm-hmm. And most of the schools do have a closet with available clothing, dresses or skirts or pants or whatever. And they should be taken advantage of when a child is inappropriately attired. And I think that it's a very good thing for the administration to be aware that this policy makes it unique and for all of the schools, not just the grammar schools or not just the middle schools or high schools, but it would be for all of the schools. And it would be a good learning thing for the children and young adults to be aware that there is a right time and a wrong time to wear certain things or to adjust their clothing in certain ways. And I don't think that we have to go and get further in the woods by getting so many different opinions, because the policy stands very well, and you're just asking for getting more stuck in the woods than we are now. So I don't think we should change it.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. I don't have strong feelings on tabling it. I certainly value the opinions of others. I sought out the opinions of others on this. Having said that, if we table it, I will request from administration a list of a comparison of how many females versus how many males have gotten cited for dress code violations in each school.
Good.
As part of the discussion.
Point of order.
Mm-hmm.
If we table it, it stays at this level, at the board level. If we withdraw our amendment in motions, then we can move to send it to committee.
Well, go back to policy.
Right, it goes back to policy. But if you table it, we're putting it on the table as a board.
Okay.
At the board level.
So are we amenable to sending it back to policy? Yes. Okay. Ms. Van Twyver, are you amenable to having this go back to policy for further work? Do we still have Ms. Van Twyver? Sounds like we might have lost her. Okay. Are you going to withdraw?
Did Mr. Kaufman withdraw his amendment? That has to happen first.
I withdraw my amendment.
Okay, I will withdraw my
And
motion.
Doris needs to withdraw her second.
I withdraw my second.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion to approve policy JICA so that we can send it to, back to policy.
Great. Was I seconded, or was that
You-
Mr.
you
Moser?
seconded it,
All right,
yes.
fine. So back to policy. If the administration could please provide me the information about a gender breakdown regarding that. I would also request that we take a look at the handbooks to see what the differences are between the various schools, because we have 12 elementary schools and 12 different interpretations. Yes, Ms. Porter.
Part of the strategic plan is that those handbooks at each school are going to be looked at, so they might not be the authority on what we're going to go back to, because I know that those are under the process of being revised and updated. So you might want to get your policy and put that into the handbooks instead of doing it the other way.
Well, that's what I was hoping for, but it sounds like the board would like to hear the other way around. So,
Point of order, could we see if we can get Ms. Van Twyver back on the phone for the remainder of the meeting?
sure. Ms. Porter, you simply hang up and then dial 7 and then her number. I do. If everyone could bear with us for a moment. Well, I'm not going to say it out loud. Let's move on while we're waiting.
Okay, our next policy, I move that we approve proposed policy IMDA, silent meditation and patriotic exercises as presented.
Elizabeth, we're calling you back. I think we got disconnected.
I'll second it.
Okay, so
Thank you, Mr. Moser.
I'm going to put you back on speaker.
This,
Thanks.
yep, this changes to this policy. Policy stays the same. We have silent meditation, we have Pledge of Allegiance, but what it says, what it tells the students is that participation is optional.
Ms. Van Twyver, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you. Did anyone have any questions or comments regarding this policy? Okay. Ms. Hohensee.
I'd like to know what patriotic exercises, plural, is meant by replacing Pledge of Allegiance with patriotic exercises, because that is vague and unspecified. It seems clear to leave it as Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. Ms. Fitzpatrick?
I'd like that comment.
Okay, let Ms. Fitzpatrick answer Ms. Hohensee's question, and then you can go.
If you notice, this policy was last reviewed in 1975. And secondly, many of our elementary schools do the Pledge of Allegiance and play patriotic music as part of their morning exercises. And that, because they do the pledge and play patriotic music, it would be considered patriotic exercises.
Thank you. Mr. Moser, please.
Oh, you're taking my thunder. Yes, I was going to say practically the same thing. That Pledge of Allegiance and patriotic music are considered patriotic exercises. And I did that while I was in school, in my grade school, and also in the high school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Yes, Mr. Kaufman.
So wasn't this past Monday, was it this Monday or was the Monday previously? It was last week.
Last Wednesday.
Our students didn't have school. What did they celebrate? Veterans Day.
No, Wednesday there was school.
There was school, my apologies. I saw a lot of people out on parade. I saw a lot of students out at the parade when I went through downtown. It's a big presence.
That was Monday. This meeting was Wednesday.
No, I'm talking about Veterans Day,
Okay.
that we celebrate as a country in honor to the veterans, and the reason why we have a pledge is all part of that. And I think you're losing touch with the citizen. I believe, yes, we have a requirement to educate, but I also believe we have a requirement to educate citizenry. And I really don't have a problem with the changes of content to the proposal, although I would personally, you're talking about two things. You're talking about silent meditation, you're talking about the Pledge of Allegiance. I would do it in 2 paragraphs instead of 1, but I want to see the Pledge of Allegiance here. It's not acceptable to me to hide that, because that's what we do. That's what we do with this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hohensee?
In an effort to compromise, I move to change the title to Silent Meditation, Pledge of Allegiance, and Patriotic Exercises. All 3 in there.
And or just and?
And, because you've got an and here, we'll just move it. So you have a list of 3 things and move your and.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh, yes, Ms.
I just want to
Fitzpatrick.
point out in this very, very short text of a proposal, of policy proposal, that it actually says Pledge of Allegiance in the sentence.
Yes, twice.
Yeah, we're talking about the title.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Regarding the amendment.
Okay, on the amendment to add Pledge of Allegiance to the title of policy IMDA, Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
No.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
No.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses and 3 noes. The motion carries.
Okay, and then on the main motion?
On the main motion to approve proposed policy IMDA
Now as
as amended. Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 8-0.
Great.
Okay, our last item is to rescind policy 2211, which is silent meditation and Pledge of Allegiance. That's the old policy. That was
Second.
from 1975. Who seconded? Ms. Owens. Okay.
Hohensee. Oh, and just to clarify, the new policy replaces the old policy.
Right.
Okay, any discussion? I
On the-
see none.
Okay. On the motion to rescind policy 2211, Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yeah.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Porter, motion carries
Yes.
8. Motion carries 8-0. Okay. Our next policy meeting is December 3rd. And I believe that's I'm not sure if that's a Monday, but
May I ask a question?
Yes.
And the agenda for that meeting, this is policy. Are we going to discuss bullying? Because I thought that's what we had agreed to do.
Yes, on the December policy agenda will be your proposal regarding adding language to JIC.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes, Ms. Fitzpatrick is yesing me, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Guarino. I didn't mean to speak for you.
No problem.
I'm on it.
You are.
Like, I know that we're doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation. Ms. Porter.
Okay, so we have several motions to put forward. The first one is regarding the K-5 scope, science scope and sequence, which was in everyone's packet from last week. I don't think we got a new one this week, but we were asked to hold on to that, so everybody does have a copy of that. So I would move to approve the K-5 science scope and sequence, next generation science standards aligned to 2019 as presented.
Second. Ms. Porter, did you wish to speak to your motion?
No, I think this was pretty thoroughly covered in committee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kaufman.
I recall a comment that Mrs. Oden made in finance when we were talking about the Chromebooks. I don't know if you remember this, but Mrs. Oden made the observation, wow, the Chromebooks are required throughout the, the Amplify Science, the next, but her comment included text to the effect, and maybe Mrs. Oden can comment and elaborate, gee, maybe we would have picked a different science curriculum if we would have known about the problems with the Chromebooks.
Amplify is at the middle school. This is elementary.
So this is not impacted by the Chromebooks?
I don't think so.
I don't
2,000
see that.
Chromebooks, we don't even know where they are.
Well, that's another issue.
What do you
This
mean we
is
don't know
on
where
the-
2,000 Chromebooks are?
We have 2,000 Chromebooks that are entering end of life. So we were given a total number. When I say we don't know where they are, they could be elementary, they could be middle.
Okay, I'm
They're
sorry. I
scattered
thought you
all over
meant
the
they were
district.
missing and I had
No, I'm
like a
sorry.
little heart attack.
No, we don't know where they're used, in what grade levels. We just have a bulk number.
Thank you.
So I don't know what the impact of that is on curriculum, especially if you're going to be buying curriculum that is online intensive. So
This is elementary scope and sequence. It listed each grade level and what they would be teaching at each grade level. I believe kindergarten and first grade had 3 units, and from second to fifth grade, I believe, had 4 units. Am I right, Dr. McKinney? Something like that? But it,
Something like that. I'm not going to go with
Okay.
the exact number, but yes, this
Yeah.
is just aligning us to the next-gen science standard.
Mhm.
Without curriculum materials, that's the next piece around finding those in science. So it's not tying it to technology, it's just helping us align the curriculum both horizontally and vertically from K to 5. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there, Ms. Hohensee?
I just want to say that I'll be voting against it. I'm not a big fan of next generation science standards because I don't think they're comprehensive enough, and I think we can't afford the money to throw into this. There's other priorities that we have as a district, so I'll be voting against it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay. I don't hear anybody or see anybody, so.
One question.
Go ahead, Mr. Mosier.
Yeah, I see the last thing on that is a PhD science. What is that?
Okay, wait, that's the next item, Mr. Mosier. We're still on the K-5 science scope and sequence.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got the.
Yep, so just to clarify, this first motion would be to approve a scope and sequence, which is the direction in which we want to take, and then the next step would be to find a curriculum, to pilot curriculums that align with that scope and sequence. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, Madam President, that's correct.
Okay, and then the third step after the pilots, they will come back to curriculum committee and we'll hear from the teachers and so forth about which curriculums they liked and didn't like and which ones they would like us to purchase, at which time we can compare the costs of those curriculums. Yes. So we're at step 1 of at least 3, if not 4. Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Good, I feel like I have an understanding. Thank you. Oh, Ms. Oden, maybe I don't.
Can I just clarify, K through 2 has 3 units in the next generation science, and it's 3 through 5 that has 4 units. So that's all that it was.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Oden.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Knowing that, I am clarified. Mr. Guarino, if you could please call the roll on the motion to approve the K-5 science scope and sequence aligned to the next generation science standards.
On the motion, Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
No.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yeah.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie,
No.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
I have 6 yeses and 2 noes. Motion carries.
Okay. All right. The second motion is regarding the elementary science pilot. So there was a robust discussion on this also at the committee level. We're expanding the pilot to include mystery science, amplify. The reason for putting that in is so there could be some vertical alignment between the elementary school and the middle school program, and to include so that we're piloting more programs. So I move to amend the elementary science pilot to include mystery science, amplify science, PhD science, and a collaboration with the Salem School District.
Okay, I'll second that.
Thank you.
All right, any comments or questions? Go ahead.
Question.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Mosher.
Yeah, what are they talking about? The mystery science amplified and PhD science.
Dr. McKinney?
So these are 3 different options for curriculum. The original motion just had mystery science, which we're using at no cost. Amplify, which we use at the middle school, which they've given us a certain allotment of the curriculum and kits to go with that at no cost. And PhD science, that is another curriculum that's also in the publishers in district. Great Minds or Eureka is the same vendor, so they're giving us both the curriculum and kits at no cost to the district.
Thank you, Dr. McKinney. Did that answer your question, Mr. Mosher?
Well, not quite.
Okay.
I can understand, at first reading here, you see a title of something that says mystery science, and you wonder what it is, whether it's teaching sleight of hand or what. And, the amplified science, we're talking about something that amplifies sound, or is it just a higher grade?
I think that these are simply the titles that the publishers of the curriculum decided would be marketable, frankly.
Yeah, I can understand make it marketable, but with titles like that, mystery, amplified, or PhD science, that's kind of misleading. And I would have liked to see something that was more descriptive of where this science will fit into our students' life, so that we know what we're actually talking about. Not the kids don't want to know what mystery and amplified and PhD science.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the pilots and hearing from teachers how they and students felt about the various curriculum.
Yeah, but I see PhD out there, and I remember we had a couple of PhDs before on the board, and sometimes it was difficult to understand what he was getting at because he was at a level that was much higher than the rest of the group.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder about that, and when I look at these things, I say, could it be more simple, more down to earth type of thing, where mystery science, I can understand. You can put that as a way to understand the world about you. That when you turn on the switch, the light lights, and that's not a mystery anymore. And amplified is, if you had 2 switches and you turn them both on, that's amplified by 2.
Mm-hmm.
and PhD science, we're teaching them about neutron stars or something like that. We got to be a little bit more descriptive as to where this fits into the school life.
Okay.
Not a catchy title. Catchy title don't mean a thing.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mosier. I will ask Dr. McKinney if he could provide the curriculum committee with an overview of the topics covered by the various suggestions for our pilot.
Thank you. I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, great. Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you. I'd like to know if this is, these materials are going to be next generation science?
Aligned, yes.
Okay, thank you. And what number of Chromebooks will we need to utilize this curriculum? Do we have that in our budget?
Thank you. Dr. McKinney.
I don't think we're there yet. The purpose of the pilot, expanding it, is to find the right fit for Nashua and to come to a recommendation and look at both cost, need for materials, kits, all of those things. So right now we're not at a phase where we could say it's Chromebook dependent. Most of these are not. We're dealing with kindergarten science. I think it's pretty hands-on and not technology dependent.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. McKinney. So through these pilots, you will investigate the technology needs as well as classroom time, et cetera. Okay.
If I could just speak to the Chromebooks, I mean, that's an ongoing piece that we're working at, and I would just ask that we kind of have a meeting at some point and talk about it in general. We know where the Chromebooks are. We're working on resolutions. We're trying to investigate options both financially and through the technology committee. So I think that whole topic should be designated in one, either in curriculum or in finance or at the board level. So
Okay.
that's up to the board to decide.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions regarding the motion to amend the elementary science pilot to include these 3 other resources and the collaboration with Salem? I don't see any, so I think we're ready for the roll, Mr. Guarino.
Okay. Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yep.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No?
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 6 yeses and 2 noes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, the third motion, I move to amend the motion from May 28th, 2019 to read as follows. To adopt the following resources for elementary literacy in grades K-5. Fountas and Pinnell Classroom Guided Reading Collection, Fountas and Pinnell Classroom Interactive Read Aloud and Collection, Fundations, and Raz Kids.
Second.
Thank you. So this is just rewording that motion, so instead of tying them to a timeline, it's just in general that these programs have been vetted through a very thorough piloting process, so these will just be on the docket as recommended resources.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you. I would just like to ask if this series, these materials use a phonics approach, or do they use a cueing approach?
Well, Foundations, I think, is a phonics approach.
Because what I read is that they use cueing and they don't stick to phonics. I read a review on them.
Of Foundations?
Of this Fountas and Pinnell, that they don't use a strict phonics approach, that they do cueing, which is guessing based on some phonetic impetus, but it's not phonics per se.
I think that the combination, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. McKinney, but the combination of these materials, it gives you just, it's a more comprehensive look at reading. So they're learning multiple strategies, I would say. Dr. McKinney, what would you say?
I didn't come prepared to debate the approach and the materials that are in here. The purpose of this recommendation is to give the board and the district more flexibility as we have a grant manager coming on board and with funds coming from the state, that some of those may, at the board's discretion, be used to purchase these materials and not be bound by the timeline that was outlined in the original motion. These materials have already been approved, so we're just asking, the origin of this is so that we have flexibility to purchase these materials when funding is available.
Thank you. For clarity, this motion has been approved in the past. We approved the purchasing of all of these materials. And we had the specific costs, et cetera, in that motion. But by rewording it, it allows for the district to look at the budgetary impact and space this out in a way that makes sense financially. Yes?
And as far as the actual materials, this was a very robust pilot process. So I think they've been fully vetted, and I think that elementary teachers are pretty happy with these choices.
Right. I recall that discussion in April and May. So we've been through all of that. Now we're talking about timeline and
It
working
just
with
gives a little
resources.
bit more flexibility to the motion.
Mr. Kaufman?
So these are the materials that the board had purchased. We thought it was going to be $200, and it turned out to be, what, $400,000 or $600,000. So we were short in terms of being able to purchase them. Are these the materials that you're speaking about?
So we're in the process of purchasing some of these materials, right? So instead of being tied down to that year 1, year 2, year 3 timeline, we're just, excuse me, as Ms. Raymond said, we're just putting them in there. They're approved materials. They've been vetted. And through the budget process, we will purchase them when we can.
So before, when we spoke to this, we had dollar values attached to the various programs. So I would like to know what the dollar values are, so that's included in, now we know at an estimate, right? A year or 2 when you might purchase them, which is possible because you've taken away the timelines. These prices, I'd like to know what, because I remember the $200,000, $400,000, $600,000. So once those things stick in my head, I'd like to know what these things cost.
Right. So all of that information is in the prior motion. Costs change over time. So if we were to say, $400,000 now, but we're not able to purchase them till January, it may no longer be $400,000. So
I don't think the cost was in the original motion.
I know we discussed it because I recall, I have the same
We've
recollection.
had a lot of discussion, but it wasn't in the last motion.
I don't believe it was in the motion, but I do believe it was in a packet that
Right, it
outlined
was
the 3-year
discussed, but we
cost.
did.
We have it.
Yes.
In terms of costs going forward, the board and the committee, subcommittee would see, like the last motion here on the list of how much it would cost and where the monies would be coming from.
Right.
Great.
Madam President,
Yes, Ms. Van Twyver.
we are now approaching 9 o'clock. We need to vote to extend the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Van Twyver. Ms. Oden?
Motion to extend the meeting.
I'll second it.
Wait.
For 30 minutes.
Thank you. And are you still seconding that, Mr. Guarino?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
I think we need to extend the meeting to complete all business on the agenda. Anything less is disrespectful to the public that's managed to stay here in case they have comments to the end. Or we're going to go back to the practice of truncating meetings where we won't have public comment or board member comment. You might recall, Mrs. Oden, when you were chair, 62% of the meetings you conducted at the board level didn't have public or board member comment. I hope we don't get to do that tonight.
Okay.
As presented, I will be voting no. I'll happily vote to continue to complete all business on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Ms. Oden?
We can vote another 30 minutes when that 30 minutes is up.
Yes, we can. Mr. Guarino?
On the motion to extend the meeting 30 minutes, Ms. Oden? Yes. Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-2.
Okay, now we're back to Ms. Porter's motion to amend the May 28th, 2019 motion And I'm not going to read the whole thing over again. So,
Okay, are we ready for the
Yes.
roll? On the motion, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyvert?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-2.
All right, the final motion is to approve the purchase of Fountas and Pinnell Interactive Read Aloud collections at a cost of $88,560 to be funded by account 91.1.992212-61875.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, Mr. Guarino?
On the motion, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyvert?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Okay, I have 7 yeses, 1 no, and the motion carries.
Okay, those are great materials, and teachers are going to be thrilled to get them around Christmas, so excellent. The next curriculum meeting will be on December 9th.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll do HR.
Great.
Okay, so we met earlier this evening, so I move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Second.
On the motion to suspend the rules, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyvert?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Okay, and we only had one motion to come out of that meeting. You'll see on your desk that we had a revised personnel recommendation. So I move to accept the revised personnel recommendations dated November 20th, 2019.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Ms. Van Twyver.
For those of us who don't have that updated one, what were the revisions?
Ms. O'Gara?
One was a retirement and one is a resignation of a coach.
Thank you.
Retirement and a what?
A coaching resignation.
Did you get that, Ms. Van Twyver?
Coaching, right?
Resignation
Of a coach.
of a coach.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I don't see any other questions or comments, so Mr. Guarino?
On the motion, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyvert?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Okay, liaison reports. As many people know, the Joint Special School Building Committee has met a couple of times since our last meeting. We have voted to move forward with the middle school building project and recommended the building of a new school. The next meeting is tomorrow at Maine Dunstable School at 7 p.m. with a public information session. Go ahead, Ms. Hohensee.
I just have a comment if you want to finish. I don't mean to interrupt. I thought you were done.
I just wanted to mention this memorandum.
Okay. I just was disappointed. At our last meeting, we voted on a motion about the middle school, and I just want to read 2 sentences from the minutes. You, Ms. Raymond, said, agreed. I just want to be clear tonight that this motion is not binding us to build a new middle school. And it goes on for 2 more sentences. And then I responded, I'm glad things are coming back to the board. And I continued. And then after that meeting, we had the JSSBC meeting where the members of this board misrepresented our motion and approved the whole thing. And now we've got, what's coming up is a bond on the whole thing that I did not support, that was not the intent of that motion. And I just feel that it's dishonest to the board, it's dishonest to the public, but I don't have the vote, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hohensee. I will say that I did not have a complete understanding of the impact. Having said that, I don't regret our vote because the difference between building a new middle school and renovating was like, was it $20 million? $15 million, and I can't see committing our district to our city and our taxpayers to spending $15 million for a middle school that still won't meet codes or the educational needs of our students. It doesn't make sense. So,
Madam President,
yes, Ms. Van Twyver.
I wish to express my complete dissatisfaction with what happened. We did not vote for this, and you people have evidently taken the thing by the bullhorn and done whatever you wanted to. I disagree with what transpired.
Thank you, Ms. Van Twyver. I just want to clarify that by you people, she's referring to a majority of the board. So,
I have one more thing I would like to say.
yes, Ms. Van Twyver.
Ms.
Ms. Van
Hohensee,
Twyver, Ms. Hohensee.
And I try to be quick. I try to be concise. I'm sorry that you're exasperated, but it's reciprocal here. What we thought is, and it's
Go
not
ahead.
really
It's funny that you said it was reciprocal. It was a
Okay,
moment
so
of amusement.
option 2 was a new building as opposed to a renovation. Part of that new building, I asked Alderman Jettie, who's on the committee, I said, what were the reasons that they didn't give for accepting the land? There's 60 acres on the west side of Buck Meadow that are not landlocked, as opposed to the 20 landlocked. And he said that was never even considered. So what we've got is a landlocked piece of property that we have no easement for. We have to drive a roadway through. And my estimates, talking to different people who build roads, is it'll be $1.4 million for the roadway without culverts or sidewalks and all those things that we need. So we're talking multiple millions, maybe $2 million to get access to this land when we have across the street 3 lots equaling 60 acres that have access. I just think there's so many things wrong with this, and we have been pushed as a board. We haven't been told, we haven't been treated honestly and respectfully, and I just want that on the record.
Thank you, Ms. Hohensee. I am regretful that you feel that way. Mr. Kaufman, you had your hand.
Thank you. I have a list of about 11, 12 items why I think this project is bad. I'll save that for the public comment period tomorrow night at the JSSB. But the fact is, I think it's wrong, fundamentally wrong, for this board and for the aldermen that also approved this, and to the gall, it's actually a lot of gall at this point, to propose going into debt, $118 million worth of debt for the city, and not have access to the land you want to build on, not have a transportation plan, not have a human resources plan, not have a redistricting plan. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Buses, we don't know how we're going to even pay, no impact on the operating budget, but we're full speed ahead. This board, I never voted against the new school building. My disagreement is with the process, that it hasn't been thorough, and it hasn't been open, and it hasn't been fair. So we don't have a way to vote on this, folks. But if we did, I'll vote against it again.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Just as a reminder, the Joint Special School Building Committee is made up of a majority of the Board of Education and also 5 aldermen. The next step in the process, which is not a JSSBC meeting, but I wanted to make the board and the public aware of it, is that we received this memorandum. It did not come in time for the for my agenda, but I do have it here that on November 12th, the aldermen met regarding a resolution for bonding, and that they will be meeting again on November the 25th at 7 p.m. To discuss the issue of bonding. And so for anyone who's interested, please check out the city website, and please feel free to attend that meeting on the 25th. Does anyone have any other questions or comments? No? Do we have any other liaison reports? No. Okay.
May I?
Yes.
So what it says here is that the board looks forward to receiving your recommendations with respect to this proposed legislation. So since it's not on our agenda now, and their meeting is on November 25th, how will this board respond to the aldermanic request for a recommendation?
I was planning to bring it up during new business as a motion, since people can add new business. But I can make my motion now, if that satisfies the board.
New business is fine.
Yeah, new business is fine. We have a 30-minute time limit. Let's stick to the agenda that we have.
Okay. Okay, the next items are our unfinished business. And the first two are non-public. I would request that we move those to the end of the meeting so that we don't have the public sitting while we discuss things in non-public and then have to come back in after they have sat here all evening. Are there any objections? No. Yes, Mr. Kaufman.
I have a question of point of order. I had asked for something to be placed on the agenda under unfinished business, which we tabled at this board, which was a request that the TIAs receive a 2.5% increase, an additional 2.5% increase. And that's not on here. I'd like that added.
Okay.
And discussed, please.
Let's do that now. Did you have a motion?
So I move to remove from the table my request to give the TIAs, I believe there are 8 of them in the district, an additional 2.5% raise over and above what was previously given to them.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Yeah.
So I remember when I first came to the board, the TIAs, let me try and, I'll probably get the acronym wrong. These are folks who teach in the elementary, well, they're not formally teachers, so I'll just say they instruct the elementary school children in the use of technology. They're in a classroom all day, they're in front of students all day, and they receive, their pay is significantly less than what teachers receive. It might be on parallel with what paras receive. I honestly don't know. But I was impressed by the contribution they made to the district then, and I just wanted them to know I haven't forgotten. It just took 4 years for me to be able to try and do something for them. The amount that we're looking at is probably close to $500 per person. There's 8 people, so somewhere around $4,000. I did speak with Mr. Donovan, and he said there was money available, have to be moved around, but we could fund it.
Okay.
And it's a one-time thing.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. It comes to my attention that moving to take something from the table is not debatable, so I won't be asking for any other questions or comments right now. We need to take a vote on whether or not to take it from the table.
On the motion to take up the TIAs, take it from the table, the TIAs pay, Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyvert,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes no, Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Porter.
No.
Okay, we have 2 noes and 6 yeses, so that is on the floor right now. The TIAs, the discussion of the TIAs pay.
Now, I know that you have spoken,
I'm
but
good.
do you have a motion?
He did have a motion. I seconded.
The motion was to take it
Take
from
it
the
off the
table.
table. Okay, so yes, thank you. Move to authorize a 2.5% increase to the 8 tiers in the district.
Second.
Okay.
Can I clarify, if I may? Sorry. It's a one-time,
Okay.
just a one-time.
For
For this year.
this, so would it be, when would it start?
Retroactive, thank you, to July 1st, rather, of this year.
Okay. Ms. Porter?
Wouldn't this be something that would come up in the Budget Committee? I think that we might be setting a precedent for just choosing, I'm not saying they don't deserve it, because obviously they do, but it seems odd that this would just be a motion to select a group of employees to give a raise to outside of the budget process. Seems a little odd to me.
Thank you. Dr. Mosley?
Typically, when we have this type of change, there's something negotiated around this, whether it's some type of working conditions. This is setting precedents in so many ways on just picking one random bargaining unit. Isn't it unaffiliated? Is that correct?
Don't have a bargaining unit.
It's an unaffiliated group of people.
Yes.
Right.
So I guess, part of this is that there are other unaffiliated bargaining units that would also like that consideration too from the board. So I guess if it's just a.
Okay, wait. There's a rumble outside, and we have side conversations, and I'm having difficulty hearing Dr. Mosley.
So if this is the precedent we're sending for one, for our unaffiliated, then I guess there will be other unaffiliated bargaining units that will be coming to the board looking for the same equity that we're offering the tiers as well.
Okay. Ms. O'Gara?
I agree with Dr. Mosley. This is just one group of people. We have many other groups of people and the support staff of the non-affiliated, and they would all like to double up on their raise that everybody got equally.
Okay. Ms. Hohensee?
Thank you. They are unaffiliated. They don't have somebody to bargain for them. This district spends an awful lot on technology, probably more than I would individually recommend. My husband works in technology. I used to work in technology. We have differing opinions on how much we need. But that being said, if this district's investing that many tens of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in technology, and then we as a habit, we hire people and we underpay them in technology, we will not get the kind of instruction that we need to maximize the use of that technology. I've seen it my 4 years here on many different levels. So if we're going to invest in the technology, we need to invest in those that are going to instruct our children the proper use of that technology. So it's sort of like foolish to invest in technology and then not in the instruction to be appropriate. So I just think this is a small amount, and it's hardly enough given what those people can get on the outside market instructing with technology. You don't see, I can see by your face, you don't understand it. I remember one time we had a discussion about getting interns to do a program over the summer, students, and we projected a rate, and then Superintendent Conrad was here. Oh no, he cut it in half. You don't get the quality of instruction you want when you undercut what the market will bear for those people. You may not like it, but that's just the way it is. So this is a very small amount, and I think it's reasonable.
Thank you. Mr.
Madam President?
Yes, Ms. Van Twyford.
I agree with Ms. Hohensee. Coming from working in the industry for 40 years, I can understand the deal with the pay. We underpay our IT people, and therefore we suffer with the quality of help that we get. So I'm going to vote for this. It's a small amount of money, and it would show how much we appreciate their work and how much we value their work. So I will be voting for it.
Ms. O'Gara.
Have any of you read their job description? Have any of you, do you have knowledge of what their wage really is? Have any of you done an analysis on their wage against the labor standards for that position or similar positions? I don't think anybody's has done any, correct me if I'm wrong, any homework on what the job is, what they're being paid, what other people are being paid similar to them. And we're rushing towards giving them a raise, and nobody has that information. Am I incorrect?
Madam President, I'll ask that of Ms. O'Gara. Have you done that, Ms. O'Gara? Do you know what outside people get paid for this job?
I certainly have access to that comparison.
Well,
Yeah.
why don't you tell us?
Well, I can't tell it off.
I'm going to end this discussion. We're not going to yell at each other. I can see that this has caused some strong feelings in people, and that makes me concerned because this is highly unusual to pull out from the non-affiliated handbook for, one group of people. I always want to pay people more. I'm really fun in negotiations because I want to pay everyone more. That's just, I think we underpay our staff. I'm very concerned about people saying negative things about the quality of our staff because I think we have people who do the best that they can. And so I think at this point, we need to think about precedent when we take this vote, and we need to think about how this affects the district as a whole. And I'm going to ask that we call the question.
Okay, on the motion to increase the
No,
TS.
call the question.
To call a question.
Okay. On the motion to
Call the
call.
question.
On the motion to call the question. Ms. Oden?
No.
To end debate.
Yep, she said no.
Okay. Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Mosher?
No.
Ms. Van Twyver?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Okay, the motion fails.
Okay,
What
thank you.
was the vote?
4-4. Point of,
But the motion to end debate, so we're still debating this.
Yes, the motion
I
was
have a
to
point of order.
end debate. Yes.
When I first got on this board, some of the gentlemen that were on before me pointed out when you make a motion like you just did, you put it in the first part of your conversation. You don't make all of your debate and then put a motion at the end. That's invalid. So going forward, it would be better if you make your motion and then defend it rather than, once you get into a debate or discussion, you're not allowed to put a motion at the end of your sentence.
Okay. Thank you for the instruction, Ms. Hohensee.
Oh, good.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I'd like to point out to the board, we have identified specific people in the past when we've approved the unaffiliated raises. We did it for the IT director. We did it for the plant operations director. We did it for the security director. We did it for one of our secretaries in the admin office. Yes. We did individual, it wasn't this year, but it was the previous year. We did that, and they were singled out amongst the 100 people or whatever is in that affiliated. So the precedent has already been set that this board has uniquely done that as part of a process. I do recall reading their job description, but several years ago, this stuck with me that I felt it was very unfair and I wanted to correct it.
Thank you. Ms. Oden had her hand up.
Thank you. What concerns me is the precedent of this one group. I don't think because their pay isn't what we really would like. I think they're high-quality people. I think they do a good job. We have other groups. At this point, I'm on the negotiating team with Ms. Raymond on the para contract. When I first came to the Nashua School District, I started out as a para. I think I made $6.25 an hour. We're having problems getting paras. They're underpaid. We have so many people, you look at, we lose teachers because teachers can go to other districts and make more money, especially if they go down to Massachusetts. I mean, we have a difficult job. I think that the tiers should be addressed during the budget, and we should look at it then, and I am concerned about setting a precedent. So I will support tabling this or indefinitely postponing it.
Make that motion at the
We
end.
can't, okay. She didn't make a motion. She just said that that's what she would support.
Point of order, if a person has the floor, they can make a motion, whether they make a speech or not. That's not in Robert's rules.
Right, it is, but she didn't make a motion. She
Right.
just said what she
So
would support.
you're changing the rules on us. You know,
We don't need to argue about it.
I don't want to argue about it, but a person can make a motion if they have the floor. That's what Robert's rule says. Whether they speak ahead of time or not doesn't matter. You're making rules up as you go along, things I never heard of.
Okay, so
Ask Mrs. Van Twyver, she's quite the
let's,
parliamentarian.
no, I'm not
Madam
gonna-
President,
Yes.
you cannot speak to a motion until it has been made. That is Robert's Rules of Order.
That wasn't
Mr.
the
Guarino,
question.
you
That wasn't the
continually-
question.
Wait.
The question was, when do you make a motion?
Excuse
Not when
me.
do you speak to a motion?
Excuse me, we're not going to interrupt each other. I'm not going to have this in my meetings.
Well, these people are
I know what you're
twisting everything
saying,
upside
Mr.
down.
Guarino. I understand. It was regarding my comments, which were to the previous motion, not to the motion that I had made at the end. So I thanked Ms. Hohensee for her feedback, and I am moving on with the evening. So where we are is we've been having discussion. Many people have spoken more than once. Are there any final comments regarding this motion to do a pay raise for the TIAs?
My comment,
Okay, Mr. Moser.
my comment is that we should not be discussing the raise until we are in budget mode. And that way we can address the needs of our employees. And I believe that these people are not under a contract, and as unaffiliated, they can be put into the process in the budget mode.
Okay, thank you. Last comment, please, Ms. Hohensee.
Fine, and I apologize for making one. I'm just trying to clarify what the previous speaker said. During budget season, we do not negotiate the salaries of any group. That's a negotiation separate from the budget. We might put money into a bucket for negotiations that occur later, but we never negotiate salaries during the budget season. So waiting for the budget season doesn't open up the door for any negotiations that I've seen in 4 years. That just doesn't happen.
Thank you. Ms. Oden, last comment,
Are
please.
are you serious? We're not negotiating anything. We're just moving the prospect into the budget season where it should be.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Last comment, please, Ms. Oden.
I move to extend the meeting another 30 minutes.
Second.
On the motion to extend the meeting another 30 minutes. Ms. Oden?
Can we have a brief discussion on the motion? And the discussion that I would like to point out is that it is now 9:30 and many people have to be up and at work very early in the morning. So I would like to encourage us that if we are going to continue the meeting, if we have significant more discussion on this one item, that we table it for another time and that we get to many of the other things that we have on our agenda. Okay.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you sound exasperated every time you call on me, and I apologize. But I might recommend that most of these things in new business and unfinished businesses, we don't need the staff members here. They can go home. They're board issues. So they should feel free to leave if we're going too late. I don't want to burden them.
Thank you. Okay.
On the motion to extend meeting another 30 minutes, Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
No.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Greeno votes yes. Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 7-1.
Okay.
Are you ready for the roll on the motion to increase the TIA's pay?
I am.
Okay. On the motion to increase the TIA's pay, Ms. Oden,
No.
Ms. Raymond,
No.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
No.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Greeno votes no. Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
No.
Okay, I have 3 yeses and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noes. Motion fails.
Thank you. The next item on unfinished business was a request from Mr. Kaufman that we get an update from administration regarding the Department of Justice English language learners investigation.
Sure, real quick. They're going to come out to us and do a kind of an audit walkthrough and check out our ELL, do some interviews, and then they're going to send a report back to us. So as far as I haven't heard anything back. They haven't done that yet, but as soon as they do that and they get that information back to us, I will certainly share it with the board.
Wonderful. So we did supply them with all of the requested information.
Yes.
Do we have a tentative, any idea?
I don't have any idea right now, but as soon as I hear something and they come down to do their investigation or look into what we're doing, I will certainly notify the board.
Thank you, Dr. Mosley. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you, and thank you for providing that update. When the issue came up, one of the discussion items was that the board would, I requested, and I believe it was accepted, that the board would receive a copy of the submission to the HRC. I forget exactly what it means. So I'm waiting for that. Could you please provide it in the next packet?
How many pages was it? Because I
I don't
believe it
know.
was several thumb drives.
Yes, it's pretty extensive. It's extensive.
Maybe you could see it in central.
I think.
So maybe,
we
is
can
there a
give you
summary
that.
document?
No, it's everything. So I would recommend we can probably put that on a thumb drive if you'd like and give that to you.
Thank you, that'll work.
Okay, wonderful. On to new business. Mr. Kaufman, you had a number of committee referrals.
Thank you, yes.
I'm sorry, I skipped over the non-publics as we discussed earlier.
I don't think the electioneering needs to be in non-public.
I would like to begin that discussion in non-public because it's a personnel matter. And then should we decide as a board that it is a public matter, we can certainly go back into public. I don't mind taking that one first. But should it stray into personnel, I don't
see any reason to use any names, but I will discuss that when we vote or we argue to go into non-public later if we want to take it separately.
I'm happy to do that one first so that you can have your discussion about non-public first. Is that acceptable?
That's fine.
That's fine.
So, but a point of order, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
So the other items that about going into non-public about reimbursement for a course, I don't think that belongs in non-public at all.
No.
That should just be referred to the Finance Committee, where we would approve it and it would be a done deal. It doesn't require a non-public session.
I just need to notify the board of my professional growth and what I'm looking for just for reimbursement. So the whole board needs to be notified.
So, but then,
So we can just that's part of.
So this is a matter that goes directly to the board and not through finance because it is for the superintendent, not for a professional.
it's disbursement of money.
I understand what you're saying.
So then can we vote on that right away? Because that doesn't need to be non-public.
You can vote on it if you want to vote. That's fine.
Okay. Sure. I move to reimburse the superintendent $1,980 for the Negotiation Essentials course that he completed in September 2019 from account 91-199-1160-52800.
I'll second.
Yes, Ms. Oden.
I have a question. According to the contract, the first course is paid for 80% and the second course is paid at 60% rate?
I don't believe that that is in the
No.
superintendent's contract.
I have to go, all of my professional, first of all, just to kind of clarify, part of my recertification and what I need to do is that any professional development that I take needs to be cleared by the school board.
So this is why I thought it might go into non-public, because it involves contract.
I believe you're right.
Thank you. I withdraw. Okay, so we're back to the committee referrals.
May I speak to it?
Yes.
So when the Board of Ed candidates had met at the library, not so much I don't think it really came up at the student meeting at the high school, but it was more so at the library when the aldermen were there, the BOE candidates were there. The issues of competency grading was brought up by a young lady, you might remember, which yields the class rank, the CTE discussion about the weighting of those courses and the GPA in general. So I wanted to capture the student comments and ensure that they got future discussion at the board level. That's what the purpose of this was about. Okay, so you understand, I'm speaking to George and Ms. Scales. When I had inquired with the state about the district technology plan and learned that the one we have is more than 5 years old, the person at the state made an interesting observation to me. He spoke about online learning versus digital learning, and I don't think we've had that conversation in the 4 years that I've been on the board. So I think, especially in the context of a new school, that needs to occur. So that's why I would recommend these are intended to go to the curriculum committee. And then the district technology plan, that needs to be started. I heard mention that it's in the strategic plan and it's due a year from now. You can't wait. That needs to begin immediately, and I'm sure Mr. Rodriguez is more than capable of doing the baseline work for what would be included in a plan, even if it's an inventory of all the equipment and when it's due. So I ask that go to finance. Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Raymond had to step out. She turned the gavel over to me. So you spoke to 3 committee referrals. First 2 are curriculum. The second one, the last one would be finance and operations. So what I want to do is to ask the committee chairman of the curriculum committee about what she thinks about these, referring these to the committee, the first 2.
Excuse me.
Competency grading and online versus digital learning.
That would be policy, because we have policies about those issues.
I thought Mr. Kaufman said
I
curriculum.
misspoke.
Okay, so
I would like, the first one would be policy,
first one would be policy,
second curriculum, and I think finance for the other one, because
finance, the other one. Okay, so I'll take the first one since I'm policy. Committee competency grading, class rank, CTE, and GPA. So that's actually kind of two different issues here. Competency grading and class rank are 2 different things, you know. So I guess we could put a discussion. I don't see any reason why we can't put a discussion on these things, but I would like to see them separated. 1 competency grading, 1 class rank, because they're different issues. And we could put them on the policy committee in the queue for a discussion on the policy committee. I don't see any reason why. Ms. Fitzpatrick, do you see any reason why we can't discuss this?
I think it's fine to put it in the queue, but I think that Dr. Mosley did point out that we have started a GPA class rank task force that includes students, guidance counselors, administrators. And didn't we have a parent there at the first meeting?
We did.
So maybe what we can do is have an update at the policy committee of that task force. Does that make sense? Mr. Kaufman, and then Ms.
Thank you. I spoke earlier about my belief that these discussions should be held in public. And I will point out, prior to the majority's arrival on the board, there was a vote by the students at the high school, the parents, and competency grading and the faculty. Competency grading was not favored by, I think it was 54% of the staff, in the 80% of 82 or so percent of the parents, and over 90% of the students. So to bury the discussion about competency grading in an administrative committee is, I mean, the public has already spoken, our students have already spoken to the need and the desire to understand what's going on with it. If you want to conduct those meetings at a policy meeting, I think that's great. You can invite those people to participate as part of the discussion. But this needs to, all of these, and I appreciate you separating them, and I'm grateful for you wanting to do that. But these things have to be done in public.
Well, I think it will be, I'm sorry, Ms. Raymond is back. I think it will be public. The problem is that we can't do everything in policy. We have a very heavy agenda, and a public discussion of that alone is going to take hour, and we have a lot of other stuff on the agenda too. So I think having it done in committee and then having them report to the policy would be perfectly public, and they're reporting to the board, and the board can ask them questions. People. You don't have to be on the policy committee to be at the policy committee meeting. You can ask questions. So I disagree that it's. I think this is the best way to do it to expedite, to get it done faster. But
Thank you. Mr. Eid?
I just have a question about the task force. When do they meet, and can anybody just show up to them?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we have the meetings. The next meeting's actually tomorrow. We had a group, we advertised it. Our high school principals are part of that. So absolutely. So.
And where are they?
Central office.
Okay. Thank you.
To be clear, a majority of the board could not show up because then we would have a quorum issue.
Right.
What time of day is the meeting?
3 o'clock, 3:30, after school.
Thank you.
You could get.
Ms. Hohensee had her hand, and then Ms. Oden.
I would like, since this is, for students, this is a key issue. And if you could just publicize that task force like we did with the strategic plan. There was a schedule so that they can come in. If they can't make tomorrow, they could come up to another meeting. But this is critical to students. They want to know when the meetings are. So they should be posted where it's accessible to them. I had a constituent the other night calling me and asking me about this issue. I mean, it's not just one or two students. It came up in the debates, in the forums, and I think that we owe it to the students to make sure that this is out there in the public so everybody has an opportunity to make one or other of the meetings, and there may be periodic updates at policy so that the whole thing stays in the public view. It's just not a surprise what the outcome is.
Thank you. Ms. Oden?
Yes, looking at the district technology plan, that was discussed the other night when Mr. Rodriguez came from central office, the new assistant director of technology, and when Mr. Kaufman brought it up at the Finance and Operations Committee meeting, I said I couldn't support it because we are in the process of hiring a new director of technology, and I would like to wait. so that that person can get hired, get on board and see what he's dealing with. The technology people are well aware of some things that need to be done. I'm sure they'll be working with him. But the other member of the committee, Mr. Mosher, and myself would not support this. So to send this back to the Finance and Operations Committee would be a waste of time. Thank you.
Because you've already discussed it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, if I may. There's a new board forming, so I would think you might have a different chair, and there may be a desire of the new members to do this once they understand that we're more than 5 years late in having one and understand the impact of the Chromebook issue on the budget. You're going to need to do this. You might try to put it off, but it's going to bite you big time next year. That's your decision. I'm trying to help you here.
My understanding from the finance minutes was that it wasn't in opposition to creating a technology plan. It was simply a recognition of the fact that we are late. We had some issues getting that done, and now we need to have a new director of technology to work on that, correct?
It's the timing, but it wouldn't make sense to bring it up again at our next meeting because there isn't support for it at this point.
Okay. So I apologize, I stepped out. Was there a motion to move these things to committees or simply a discussion of it?
No motions on the board right now.
Okay.
We just discussed it.
And was it decided that the committee that is talking about class rank and GPA, et cetera, is to be reporting to policy when they have something to report?
No, I thought the motion was that once we come up with some recommendations in the wintertime, that we would report back to the board our findings and recommendation. That was the motion made by Ms. Odom.
Okay.
Did you make a motion?
No, when that was first voted on.
Oh, that was previous.
Yep.
Oh, from a previous
This is
meeting.
the motion that was made on April 8th
Okay.
to form that committee.
Okay,
Oh,
great.
okay.
So,
Please read it.
sure.
All right. Ms. Oden, seconded by Ms. Porter, that the board direct the superintendent to convene a task force in September 2019, headed by a central office administrator and comprised of administrators, teachers, guidance counselors, students, and parents from the high school level to study and evaluate whether the current GPA class rank system should continue to be used at our 2 high schools. Should the task force determine through its research and study that the current GPA system should be changed, the task force should have a suggested replacement for the current GPA class rank system. A final report of their findings and recommendations should be submitted to the Board of Education no later than February 15th, 2020.
Okay. Well, that answers that question. Okay. I think I saw Ms. Hohensy's hand go up first, and then Mr. Kaufman.
Okay, I'd just like to move to publicize those task force meetings in both high schools and on our agenda between now and February, so all the students know when these meetings that will affect their life in high school will be occurring. And maybe then they could come and be up to date, even if they just sit there and watch, so they know what's going on. I don't want to keep this out of the public purview.
I'll second that.
So, Dr. Mosley, I assume, since it says in here that the task force is comprised of administrators, teachers, guidance counselors, students, and parents, that those people are part of that task force right now?
They are. Be happy to publicize as much
Okay.
as I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion was specifically to put it on our agenda.
And the high schools, publicize it in the high schools. They're directly affected.
This is our agenda. Are you speaking to our calendar?
Our calendar, but somehow they must have a calendar of events so that the high school students are directly notified. So it might just be the honor students, it might be whichever students that have an interest in where they can apply to colleges, how this will affect them positively or negatively in their perceptions. They might want to watch these meetings.
Okay, I don't believe that
Watch
these are
or
public
participate? I
meetings
don't
that
know
are.
what you were
Well, if
talking
they're
about.
allowed to participate, that would be great, but they should at least be able to listen and hear what's going on.
Okay. Mr. Eid, is there a calendar or some sort of online access for students of what's going on?
There's an announcements email that people can sign up for. I get those all the time. Nothing else standardized that I can think of unless.
We could also announce it at our school over the intercom because they have morning announcements and end of school announcements.
Okay.
That's another
But
thing.
I didn't know that this was happening. So.
Okay.
But
Thank
from
you.
now on, I will.
And there's also there's TVs like in some of the hallways, and it could be put up there. That's an idea.
Okay.
I would be happy to work with the building principals at the high school to publicize these meetings so that all can come.
Okay. I would I move to amend Ms. Hohensy's motion to state that it be publicized at the high schools, but strike on the Board of Education. You said agenda, but I think you meant calendar.
I meant calendar, so you're right. Because I think parents aren't in the schools, and if parents, that gets better publicity. And if somebody wants to come, that allows the public in general to come.
Yep, I understand. I would just move to strike it from our calendar because it is not a Board of Education meeting. And I think that's confusing.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, on the amendment to the motion to publicize the meetings of the task force at the high school, but not on the BOE calendar. Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 3 noes and 5 yeses. The motion carries.
Okay. So on the main motion?
On the main motion to publicize the meeting schedule of the task force at the high school, as amended, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 8-0.
Okay. So that is the competency class rank, CTE, and GPA. The technology plan has been discussed at finance, and so that leaves online versus digital learning conversation. Was that resolved while I had stepped out? No.
I'm not sure which committee Mr. Kaufman was referring to.
I would suggest curriculum.
Curriculum, okay.
Okay, so are you making a motion to move that to curriculum committee?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Unless it's a friendly one and the chair accepts it.
Can you put that on your queue, Ms. Porter?
I will add it to the queue.
Thank you.
Saved us a roll call, if she's willing.
Yes, I agree 100%. So Ms. Porter has agreed to add it to her queue. Great. So that takes care of that. So now we are left with our non-publics. I suggest that we extend our meeting for public comments and board member comments.
And then do the non-publics.
And then do the non-publics.
I move to extend the meeting to finish the business of the day, whether it's the public comment and the non-public. Just one last motion for extension.
Second.
I can support one more half hour, but I can't support an endless extension. So.
Well, that would include the non-public session. I don't know how long you're going to need for the para update or any of these things. I don't want to truncate it in the middle.
No, I agree. I don't like to truncate either, but we have only so much time. So on Ms. Hohensy's motion to extend for the business of the evening, the agenda. I'm sorry, I misspoke on the agenda.
Okay, on the motion to extend the meeting to finish the business on the agenda, Ms. Oden?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
No.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
No.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
No.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 noes and 3 yeses. Motion fails.
Mr. Kaufman?
Move to adjourn.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman has moved to adjourn,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Mosher. It's not debatable, Ms. Oden.
On the motion to adjourn, Ms. Oden?
No.
Ms. Raymond?
No.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
No.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4 noes and 4 yeses. Motion fails.
Okay, so we are not adjourned. Mr. Guarino?
I move to extend the meeting 30 minutes.
Okay, seconded.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms.
Does-
Valency?
Which agenda items are we going to cover in the next 30 minutes? Which one are going to be jettisoned?
I don't know. I would suggest that we start with public comments. And then personally, I would truncate board member comments for the non-publics, but that is a matter for the board to decide.
Then are we going into non-public, and which, if so, which?
Well, I made a commitment to you that we would start with the electioneering, and I think that we should stay with that. My suggestion is then the memorandums of understanding, because that's a safety issue. And then,
That's also left over from a previous meeting.
yes.
On the motion to extend the meeting 30 minutes, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensie?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, 3 noes. Motion carries.
Okay, so we have a deadline of 10:30. Public comments on any topic you wish to discuss, limited to 15 minutes.
Is that a challenge?
No.
Just curious. Adam Marcoux, I live at 4 Jewelry Lane. I'm president of the Nashua Teachers Union. I wanted to speak on behalf of the TIAs who don't belong to anyone. I've tried to adopt them. There are 8 of them. That means some of them travel to other schools because we have 12 elementary schools, and the work they put in and the recognition they get are not equatable. We're very fortunate that we have the 8 people we have in those positions who come to work every day for what they get compensated. So hopefully that can be addressed moving forward in a process that follows whatever process the board uses, you know, when you're not dealing with a group that negotiates. Because I would have been up here had it passed looking for 2.5% for my paras, food service workers, secretaries, and teachers who also work very hard in their jobs every day. The only difference is that they have me to negotiate for them, and our TIAs are in the non-affiliated handbook. So I just wanted to come up and speak and show my support for the TIAs. When we do recognition weeks, I try very hard to make sure that they're included, because while they're not teachers in the contract or paras in the contract, they're educators supporting our kids in our schools, and it's important that they're included in those recognitions, whether it's Teacher Appreciation Week, Para Appreciation Day, Secretaries Week, Food Service Hero Week, whatever weeks we're in, that they're part of that. So that is my comment on them. And I guess my question to the board chair is if the discussion about my union is going to start in non-public, If it comes back into public for discussion, will the board entertain public comment on that after? Because I haven't addressed anything related to the complaints made against my union, against me personally, against my vice president personally, and feel that if this is going to be a public matter before the board, that the union has the ability to counter those claims.
I appreciate your restraint, Mr. Marcoux, and I have no objection to that. Does anyone else have an objection? No, I'm seeing heads shaking no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comments on any items?
Deb House. I work at Amherst Street School in Nashua, and I just want to commend the board for adopting those 2 anti-discrimination policies that address transgendered students and transgendered staff. I think it's very important to be inclusive and to recognize the humanity of all our students and staff, and to emphasize that we will treat all of our students with civility and humanity, and all of our staff the same way. So I applaud your courage in taking that stand, and applaud that you will not be sidetracked by attempts to distract with arguments that really are taking small instances or what ifs and putting them in the way of the day-to-day interactions that we have with students and other staffs. It's all about how you treat the people that are in front of you, not the what if, the furthest case that you could bring the argument out to. I'm going to treat everyone who's in front of me with the same respect. And that's all it comes down to, and I applaud you for recognizing that that's how we should treat everyone, whether they're a student or another staff member. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. House. Any other public comments? No? Okay, given the lateness of the hour, I would request that the board consider moving to our non-public now instead of board comments. So I'm seeing disagreement, so I'll make that a motion so that we can, make a decision. So I move that we move to our non-public session at this time instead of board comments.
Second.
Mr. Kaufman?
So I appreciate the late hour. At the same time, we should follow the agenda, and the board should have the public a right to speak publicly on any matter. That's our right as a board member. It's in our agenda. It's embedded in our policies. I just hate to go back to what it was 2 years ago, where 62% of our board meetings didn't have public and board member comment. So allowing the public is a nice thing. Denying the board, especially board members who won't be here in several weeks, the opportunity to speak, speaks volumes if you approve this.
Thank you,
Public will know you don't want us to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. Then Mr. Kaufman should not have tried to adjourn the meeting before public comments. He actually tried to cut himself out.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. On the motion to forego public comments at this time and move to unfinished business.
Are we going to was that for non-public?
This is to forego public comment. It's just to take things out of order.
Oh, okay. All right. On the motion.
Saying there'll be board member comment when we come back?
It depends on the time, is what I'm saying. It may be that we can resolve our non-public quickly. I don't know.
Motion to, on the motion. Ms. Oden,
Can you read the motion again?
can you say your motion again?
Do not, okay. My motion is to, I'll phrase it clearly. My motion is to take things out of order and forego board member comments at this time in favor of doing our non-public first.
Okay. Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
No.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver,
Yes.
Mr. Greeno votes yes. Ms. Hohensee,
Abstain.
abstain. Ms. Porter,
Yes.
I have 6 yeses, 1 abstention, and 1 no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
So now you need a motion to go into non-public, right?
All right, I move that we go into non-public under RSA 91A32A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or the disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him, unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests an open meeting, in which case the request shall be granted.
I will second the motion.
I would like to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Is this for the electioneering?
Specifically regarding the electioneering, I would suggest that we make a second motion regarding going into non-public for
the other items.
For the other items,
Okay.
to be
So-
respectful of people who might want to come back.
I have a question as to who should be allowed to go into non-public. I think there's a conflict of interest here. I think there's board members that have been endorsed, funded, and assisted into office by the union. There are board members that were given emails. From my right to know, I discovered that the NTU retirees got these electioneering emails 2 weeks before the election, maybe other times too, but they never spoke out and said anything about the violation of our contract. They never said anything about the violation of state law. So I don't know which side they're on, and I don't think we should have a discussion with them in there. I think there's a conflict of interest.
I would suggest that in other circumstances where there is a conflict of interest, the person who has the conflict self-reports and abstains.
Well, that's why I would like to have it in public and just not use names. I can do that without using names.
But
All
we're-
of this information was publicly obtained, but I don't have to use anybody's name. If I keep the names out of it, then it's not going to ruin anybody's character.
Okay. On the motion, unless someone has another comment.
So would it be easy to figure out who these people are without naming them? I mean, if you're talking about...
If she's talking about retirees who could be on the board and could be...
So me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were, I'm just asking.
I just to say, I was in that retiree group, and I, under advice from Dr. Mosley and from Adam Marcoux, dropped out of that because it was a conflict. So I am no longer affiliated with that group.
Okay.
At the very beginning of my term. And that was a hard thing for me to do because I was really invested in that group, but to avoid any conflict, I have not attended meetings. I have not gone to anything. I severed all my ties with that group.
But, thank you for sharing that, but what I'm saying about this issue in general, I don't have to say anybody's name ever. We can talk about it in the abstract, what was done without ever mentioning a name.
Is it going to, I mean, the president and the vice president of the union, it's not going to be
President of the union is not an
implied.
employee, and everybody else is just a
The
union.
vice president is an employee.
Well, I'll just say the president, I don't have to say anybody more than the president and union reps.
Okay.
So they could be anybody.
Well, there's only so many union reps, and I would suggest that if anything that we discuss could potentially lead to the disciplining of an employee, that we ought to discuss it in non-public, and then if we are, I just think that we ought to be on the safe side because I would prefer not to be sued.
I don't think
agree with you.
we're going to be disciplining them. If it's a state law, the AG's office would take care of it. If it's our contract, we would decide whether we're going to do what our attorney suggested. That's, again, the court. It's not us saying anything in particular. It would be a generic thing, our attitude towards union reps in general and about what they did. We don't have to go into names. The names are irrelevant.
Okay, I withdraw my motion. If at any point it appears like we're getting into something that ought to be in non-public, I will ask us to cease and then make the motion at that time. Ms. Oden?
Yeah, I have a problem. I'm a retired teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say retired teachers, that involves me, or somebody could think it's me. I've never heard of this group. I don't know anything about this group for retired teachers. So no, I am not going to support this in public. This ought to be in non-public. When you make generalizations like that, you can incorporate just about anybody. So
Okay.
no, I won't support this.
Okay, fine.
But see, we don't have a list of who the retirees are. I'm just saying, from the emails, there is a name that they put in the two-line, NTU retirees at, and then the name. So it's just a general thing.
Ms. Hohensee, if you could give us an idea of the nature of what you want to discuss. Why did you ask that this be added to our agenda, if it is a matter for the state and the AG's office?
Because I think, number one, we have to decide as a board what we are going to do. If there was a violation of our contract, are we just going to say that's fine? If we're in para negotiations, I mean, all 4 contracts have this prohibition against electioneering because it's a state law.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a prohibition about using our district mailboxes. That's in 4 contracts: the teachers, the paras, the secretaries, and the food services.
So to be clear, you sent this up to the Attorney General's office and the State Department of Education, who are...
Did not send it to the Department of Education.
Oh, no, and you said the state. Who's the state?
Secretary of State.
Oh, the Secretary of State.
And the AG's office.
Okay.
They would prefer the AG's office would handle it.
Okay, so the
I
AG's...
also filed a complaint locally with the city clerk. She checked with the city council, and he recommended that that the city clerk sends it to the superintendent to conduct an investigation and reach out to me with an update.
Okay.
That was November 1st, and I've received no update.
Okay, so we need to invite people back in, because we've had quite a robust discussion publicly without the public here, which is not fair. We cannot... At this point, I guess my question is, what are you looking for the board to do tonight?
We all took an oath to uphold the law.
I understand that. I'm asking, what is your action item for the board this evening? You've provided us the information that you have this concern, where you have referred it, so investigation should be happening. So in my perspective, we now have to get, like, when those investigations are concluded, get the information. So if people accept them as an investigation. So my question is, what is the action item that you would like us to do regarding this issue?
Number one, I think
Dottie, can you tell them that we're not in non-public?
We need to recap when they come back in. Yeah, we didn't turn it off because we didn't take a roll call. We didn't go into non-public.
Right.
Is Jimmy still there, or did he leave?
No, he's right there. I see him.
Okay, so...
It's not Jimmy. I
Okay,
forget
fine.
the other person's name. Sorry, Brian?
Okay.
Brian. Yeah, it's Brian. I apologize. Oh. Yeah, you can go. This. Yeah, so I wanted to show you this in your contract. Okay.
see that right there?
Yeah.
I haven't used any of that money in the last 3 years.
I know, but that's what the contract says.
Base salary.
It says per year.
Yeah, I haven't used any of them.
It doesn't like roll over unless. Okay, so we are still public. We're still live. People are watching us at home, people who don't have other things to do. So, Ms. Hohensee, Mr. Gorino? Thank you. I had just asked Ms. Hohensee what action item she is proposing for the board. She's advised us that she has talked to the city clerk.
I'll give them a quick update.
Oh, great.
Okay, so I filed a complaint with the city clerk about the electioneering because I got reports from 3 different district staff member, and I had, from north, from south, and an elementary school. She, at that point, it was like November 1st, asked the corporate counsel what to do with the complaint. Attorney Bolton said to send it to the superintendent. The superintendent was supposed to investigate, reach out to me, and give me an update on what he found. That was November 1st. I haven't received anything. And in the interim, I gave him a right to know request in which I got 42 emails on 2 different dates that I selected, trying not to be intrusive or burdensome with a right to know request, asking for union emails to see if there was electioneering. Out of the 49 I got, 42 were what I would consider electioneering. And I think our attorney had the same impression. I don't need to tell the names of who did what. That's really not the point. The point is we took an oath to uphold the law. If this is not what's supposed to be happening in our schools, then we should be aware of it. There was 2 different types of things. There were emails that were sent out with a link to a page that gave the candidate information like this. And then there was the meeting in the elementary school where staff members were literally handed this, not an email, they were handed political information. The statute says that public employees shall not disseminate political information in public buildings. It's not before, during, or after school. That's contract when they have their meetings. The statute just says they're not supposed to hand these out. So part of my right to know request, which I haven't had satisfied, was to ask the principals in each school, because according to our contract, they're supposed to get, the union members may meet before, after, and during breaks or whatever with prior approval of the principal. So I asked him to request from the building principals, where did they have union meetings where they handed out this information? Because I think they want to uphold the contract, they want to uphold state law. So whether they knew about it in advance or not, those principals should be asking the union reps in their buildings, did this happen? Okay? So that I never got from the superintendent. So I would like this board to request that information because it's in violation of the right to know law. I think that's what he should be doing. I also filed a complaint with the Secretary of State and the AG's office and the local police. The local police would work with the AG's office. If there was an investigation, the Secretary of State defers it to the AG's office. So that's a separate investigation. We also have whether we file a complaint with the PELRB on an unfair labor practice, because we have sections in here that tell them they're not supposed to distribute this information related to local, state, or national political matters. That was 12.3. That was violated. There was also another section in 12.6 that was extremely important, but non-germane. Nothing contained herein shall be construed to prevent the board, a member of the board, or its designated representatives from meeting with any teacher for expression of the teacher's views. We were prevented in the last 2 years from doing that, so that was very disturbing to see that. But regardless, you can read it, that's 12.6.
I think our expressions are because no one's been prevented. We just said you can't enter the building whenever you choose and wander about. You have to have an appointment.
Okay, I don't want to get sidetracked
So,
on that, but I
but-
think there's standing for us to have talked to teachers more than we were allowed to do in the last 2 years.
Right.
But
So-
right now, we have to decide, what are we as a board going to do about the violation of the contract? And what are we going to do about deciding whether or not we should even find out if this material was handed out in our schools, as a staff member reported to me?
So
Who's the staff member?
no,
But
no, we're
that's
not.
retribution, and they were not in non-public. I'm not going to name anybody's names.
We're not naming names in public.
That's
But
it, material.
I'm going to go back to the question that I asked you, which is, what is your proposal for an action item for the board this evening? It's important that you've brought this information to us, but what is your, what would you like us to do with
I've got several.
it?
I said, one, I would like the completion of my right to know request, finding out which principals had meetings in their buildings where these materials were handed out. I would think if it happened in my building and I was a principal, I would want to know.
Okay.
If I didn't know in advance, I'd want to know after the fact, because I'm responsible for that building. That's number one. Number two, what are we going to do about the violation of the contract?
What's your proposal?
I'm not done. There's still another whole component to this.
Okay.
There's city ordinances that we file campaign expenditure reports in October and December 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And these political action groups, like this group that gave this out, the NTU, hasn't filed in 12 years. So I think they spent a little bit of money. They spent last election $750 per endorsed candidate, this time $500 per endorsed candidate, plus mailings, plus help at the polls, all that. It's never been computed. That's in violation of Nashua ordinances. It's a fine of $100 a day. Each day is a separate offense. That I discovered a year or so ago from the city clerk's office when I was following up on an individual that hadn't filed.
But that's...
So, yet it's all related to our elections.
I'm not debating that, but what you're saying is that they violated a city code. That's not our role. We need to stay in our role as the Board of Education. So you're alleging that the contract was violated, but the question is email communication a violation of the contract?
It's a mailbox. It's an electronic mailbox. If they get an email with a link that leads them to this information, they're using district services and mailboxes to disseminate election materials.
Right, and I believe that this is a question for our attorney.
Why do you believe that?
Because I don't know if physical mailbox or if electronic mailboxes count. I don't know. That's a question that I would ask either Steve Bolton or Tom Clausen. And I'm not prepared to vote on it without that information.
Well,
Madam President.
Yes, Ms. Driver.
I believe our policy states that you can't use our electronic device network to do this, to do electioneering. You can't do it. You can't post it on the wall either, and we saw that. Electioneering posted on right outside the board meeting room.
That was a student issue that they forgot to take down their placards after an event.
I don't care if it was a student issue.
Okay, that's a separate issue.
Okay, so I feel
Well,
like we just spent 20 minutes on this, and I still don't know.
Our attorney told me to keep all the documentation, and from my understanding, talking to him, he thought it was indicative of electioneering. And he was the one, not me, that suggested that we might want to file a complaint with the PELRB.
Okay.
And if we're, if they're not acting in good faith, why are we negotiating with the para contract? This is all the same union. They all have the same provision. The paras are as involved as the teachers.
Well, the paras are a separate union from the teachers.
Yes, but they were involved and they got these campaign materials also.
Okay.
From my contacts that I'm not giving names for.
Thank you.
Unless you're a police officer and you can provide protection
No,
for
I
that
have no
individual.
desire to out anyone on either side of anything. I don't think that we ought to be discussing names because we're not,
Agreed, agreed.
because if we did, it would become a disciplinary issue, and that's what we're trying to, we'd have to go into non-public. So your suggestion at the end of this is that you would like the board to file a complaint to the PELRB for them to investigate?
If we think our contract is worth defending, yes.
Okay. Are you going to make that motion, or are you willing to wait until we speak with our attorney?
I would like to make the motion that this board files a complaint with the PELRB on electioneering because of that Section 12.3 was violated.
Okay.
I think.
Second.
Okay.
Think this evidence is pretty clear.
Okay. It's the Public Employees Labor Relations Board,
Yeah, and
who are like the governing body of things. Dr. Mosley.
I just want to say that I think this is wrong. I really do. I think that to ask principals where teachers gather and talk about union business and put myself and my faculty under that circumstances to do this investigation on who said what in 18 different buildings, I think it's wrong. I really do. And I think it's wrong that we are treating our employees this way. I think that what's being broached here is unreasonable, and I'm saying that for the record. And I don't think there's any electioneering that, if there's electioneering, whatever it is, but I think that this is part of what has plagued this district so long. And I don't think that putting or having my faculty spend 3 hours, gather all this, including myself, and keep the business of the district going on, and we're now here at 10:30, I think it's wrong, and it's a disservice to our students, it's a disservice to our parents, and it's a disservice to the faculty.
Okay. Okay.
I guess contracts don't mean anything, huh?
Okay, we're not going to do snide comments. This is what happens when we go too late. People get, cranky, and we don't treat each other nicely.
And I'm as cranky as can be because I'm listening to somebody who is, a wonderful sleuth, but also somebody who is doing something that they're not supposed to, and that is by snooping, not sleuthing, but snooping, and gathering all of this information and doing a bunch of stuff on her own, which she's not has not been elected to do, and doing things that is in contrary to what a good board member would be doing, and that is by going and doing all of these outside things without vetting it with the board president, who takes responsibility for all of the things that we're supposed to be doing, and definitely somebody is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and she's being an awful snoop. And
again, we're not going to be making
all kinds of things. I'm not finished yet, and she's doing a lot of things that she's not supposed to be doing, and keeping us all fired up on something that she should have been doing, and that has been going on for a long time, and that is by vetting all of us snooping with the president of the board to see if there's something that has to be taken up by attorneys and by the rest of the state. That is what you're supposed to be doing, not going out and doing it on your own, contacting this one, that one, and the other one. That's wrong.
Okay.
That's
Thank
not
you,
a board
Mr.
member.
Moser.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I think there's enough evidence that deserves research. And if the contract has been violated, as it appears to have been, the board has to defend the contract. The only recourse we have, according to Tom, is through the PELRB. That's where collective bargaining agreement, I'll just call them issues, are brought to that body for discussion and resolution. I think we need to do that. If At a minimum, we need to refer this to Tom, and the board should request that Tom look into this and come back with a recommendation. I'm sorry, Dr. Mosley, but our board and Mr. Moser, our responsibility is to ensure that contracts are upheld. We sign on to this contract. We spend a lot of money. The public has a trust in us. We have to enforce our contract, because if you don't enforce every provision of the contract, then other provisions will kind of fall by the wayside. That's just what happens. So how this board moves forward, I would like to see it go to Tom, and Tom perform, his due diligence and come back to the board within a short period of time. It needs to be addressed this board, not next board, because the problem exists where
I understand what you're trying to say.
so those members we know did receive material and financial support from the union. So at a minimum, they should be recused. So it should be this board. I'm happy to hear that Ms. Porter and Ms. Oden aren't members of that retired teacher union distribution list. So that's where I would like to see this go.
Okay. Ms. Porter?
Madam President, I'm going to have to go. I've got to put my compression boots on and get that done. It takes an hour, so I'm cutting out.
All right, I understand. Thank you, Ms. Van Tuyver.
Bye.
Okay, Ms. Porter. Wait, Ms. Porter?
I'm not really sure what the issue is with the retiree group, because those are retirees and those are all home emails.
Okay, I think we're getting lost in the weeds here. The motion is to send it to the PLRB for investigation. Mr. Kaufman has suggested that he would like to, or action. Mr. Kaufman has suggested he'd like to see Tom vet it. I happen to agree with Tom vetting it. I will be voting against it because I think our attorney should see it.
May I speak?
I would really request that we limit conversation at this point, but go ahead.
We'd have to send it to Tom. We'd send it to Tom to decide whether we have a case. So I will amend my motion if you'll take that. As to the explanation for what this email is, it was an email by the union to...
No, I don't want an explanation of the email at this time.
He's confused.
I'll wait for
Okay,
Tom's report.
it was just an email to retirees, and the whole thing was forwarded throughout the building over and over and over again, so that you were listed as, not you, but retirees were listed in the file for the emails. So I know it went to retirees. That's why I brought it up.
Okay.
Because you were a retiree. No further anything from that. So if we can switch the motion to bring it to Tom for review to see whether this is a valid complaint, looking at the evidence, which he told me to collect and maintain.
Fine, okay.
And hopefully for the superintendent to do what the clerk and the corporate counsel asked him to do, is to investigate.
Okay, and I'm sorry, who was the second?
I'll second that, of course.
Okay, Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. So this motion has been changed to send to council
Yes.
to look at
the information.
Look at information. I would like to amend the motion to say alleged electioneering, because to say that they're electioneering.
Friendly
people-
amendment, she was fine with it.
That's absolutely fine.
Okay, I
Don't
just
need to
wanted
argue it. I agree.
because, people are innocent until proven guilty, and,
I know, except when
Okay.
you're a board member.
Okay.
Excuse me?
That's a joke, except when you're a board member. Levity?
Okay, so on the motion, Ms. Oden,
It's a violation.
I truly believe there are two sides to every story. We have people here that have sat here for the night. Can we ask them
No.
the other side?
I don't want to launch an investigation at the board level, but I understand if Mr. Marcoux or Ms. Howes would like to speak.
We have to vote first.
Oh.
We have to take any action before you open up public comment.
Because you're not invited to do that.
Okay, Mr. Moser, we can hear your side.
Who's he talking to? He's supposed to
Discussion.
be alone.
Well, he very well could be talking to himself. I knew that all the time.
Out, yes.
Okay, On the motion to send the allegations to Mr. Clausen.
Okay, on the
And
motion.
seek his counsel, yes?
On the motion to send allegations of electioneering to council and seek his opinion, Ms. Oden?
You can come back to me.
Okay.
Just
Ms. Raymond?
Yeah, yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Ms. Van Twyver is not here anymore. Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
No.
Ms. Oden?
I just lost here.
To send to council the information regarding alleged electioneering and seek his counsel to send to Tom Clausen.
I'm going to say no.
No. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3 no's and 1, 2, 3, 4 yeses. The motion carries.
Okay, okay. So, would either of you find individuals wish to speak at this point? I'm getting the stare of death, so I'm going to say no. Yes?
So you can send it to corporate counsel, Tom, whomever you'd like. We're happy to answer your questions and queries through our attorney. But the interesting thing that's been pointed out to me by multiple people is that the action by a board member here was taken after the union supported the district and board members asking for her resignation. And it's suspect that it's some sort of retaliation against the union. She gave it to her associates, I guess you will, using my name, the vice president's name. And last time I checked, we were employees of the school district too. So you made claims against my local, my union, my contract, me, and the vice president. And the evidence you provided is suspect at best, because a lot of the information you provided was available on our website, on our Facebook page, was mailed out legally. We've met with the city clerk, and there's found no issues with the city clerk. So do what you have to do. That's what you're charged with doing. I defend my contract to the end, and I would expect the board to defend the contract. So I'm not going to talk out of both sides of my mouth and say I don't want you to defend the contract when I want you to defend the contract and when it benefits me. So if it's the will of the board, and it was, so be it. Then we'll fight this out here at the board level, at the PERLB, and what happens, happens, and we'll move on from that whenever there's an outcome. You know, it was interesting, we wanted to have it done at this board because, well, we endorsed 8 and 9 candidates at the next board. So, you know, when I have local community members call and ask me who we should vote for, that should send a message too, that the city is done with the antics on this school board, and that's why you two aren't elected anymore. That's the end of the story.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marcoux. We have exceeded the time that we gave for ourselves. So we
Move to adjourn.
Point of order, you cannot make a motion out of order, as Ms. Raymond did not give you the floor. You can only make a motion when you have the floor. I'm
so
sorry to
sorry,
interrupt. I
sorry.
apologize,
I
Ms.
was just
Ms.
trying to
Raymond.
get out of here.
I understand, but when we go late, we have a tendency towards rudeness towards each other, and it is unfortunate.
Do we want to take up the superintendent's issues?
Well, we have the superintendent's issues, and we have the MOUs that we still need to approve. So, however, it is 11:15, and people have places to be bright and early. I know. I have places to be in less than 8 hours, and I'm sure that that is true for the superintendent, who gets up in like 3 hours or something ridiculous. So I'm torn between respecting his wallet and his sleep needs.
Talk about with the non-public about what I just wanted to present.
Okay.
That's all.
I move to go into non-public under, I think it's under 91A32A.
I will second.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to be facetious, but I'm trying to understand. Since it's listed on the agenda, we know what we're talking about in the dollar amount, and his contract is a public document. Council told us that we could put that on the website, so I don't understand what's left to go into non-public about. I'm puzzled, genuinely.
Mm-hmm. I think
not-
that's a fair question. I guess I would defer to Dr. Mosley, who may want to have some commentary regarding his coursework that might go into
do.
personnel issues and his own
But that
personnel
should-
file issues.
Oh. I mean, getting reimbursed for professional development is pretty open and shut. It's,
Unless we get into like why and how we picked it and that kind of stuff. It could potentially become a non-public issue.
I don't see why.
Okay, well, I mean,
Yeah, I just
If
don't.
we can just go into non-public, if it's quick, it's quick. If it's not, it's not.
okay, on the motion to go into non-public under.
On the motion to go into non-public, Ms. Oden? Ms. Oden? Okay, that's a yes. Ms. Raymond?
Yeah.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeses. Motion carries. We're in non-public at 10:46 PM.
We are back.
Okay?
It's 11:06, and we are back in public. The recorder is back on. I move that we seal the minutes of the non-public that we just completed.
At 11, okay, I'll second. Motion to seal the non-public minutes, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes,
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Was that a yes or no?
that was a no.
No.
No? Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Ms. Hohensee?
No.
No?
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 2 noes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. Yeses have it.
Okay, I need to make these motions separately. I move that we reimburse the superintendent $1,980 for the negotiation essentials course completed on September 2019, account 9119991160528800.
I will second.
Okay,
Um,
Ms. Hohensee?
I can't vote for this because it's in violation of the contract, and the board wouldn't wait to get legal advice, and it's reimbursed. It's supposed to have prior approval, and as far as I know, the board and the union are the negotiators in a contract. I don't understand if he had asked me prior to it, I wouldn't have approved this course anyway. It's not part of his job description.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hohensee.
Are you ready for the vote, Madam President?
Yes, I believe we are.
Okay. On the motion, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 2 noes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. Motion carries.
All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I apologize. You're reimbursing him for the full amount?
Yes, that was the motion.
Even though the contract says 80%?
Yes.
Okay, so you knowingly, fine, thank you.
We had an extensive discussion.
Okay, fine.
In non-public.
Fine.
I move to pre-approve disbursement of $1,980 to the superintendent upon completion of the advanced negotiations course, and to pre-approve disbursement of $1,035 to the superintendent upon completion of the strategies conflict management class, both to come from account 9119911605280.
I will second the motion.
Yes, Mr. Kaufman.
I'll be voting against this because it does not adhere to the terms of the personnel contract.
Thank you. Ms. Hohensee?
I will also be voting against it because he's already exceeded the limit of the contract for a calendar year. The first distribution should have been 80%, the second one is 60%. There's no provision for a third course, and he's already over budget. And it's just, I'm not voting for it.
Thank you, Ms. Hohensee. Okay.
On the motion, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm next.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kaufman, I apologize.
No.
No. Okay. Mr. Mosher is yes.
Correct.
Mr. Guarino is yes. Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Okay, great. I have one other item. I move to approve the memorandums of understanding that were in our packet from Mr. Lessard that we've gotten 3 times now and haven't approved in public.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Lessard has been waiting patiently for a very long time for these, and they regarding our kids.
Memorandum of understanding, okay.
From Mr. Lessard.
There were 2 of them, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. 3 confidential memorandums of understanding.
Did I second? Did you get a second?
I got several seconds. We'll go with
Yes,
Mr. Kaufman.
So the documents presented to us are not signed.
We have to
By
approve
the
them.
superintendent.
Yes, he's waiting for us to approve them.
Okay.
On the motion to approve memorandums of understanding, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Oh, yes.
Motion
Sorry.
carries 7-0.
Okay. I move to adjourn.
Oh, motion
Yeah,
to
we are.
adjourn.
Second.
Everyone seconds.
A third.
On the motion to adjourn, Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Porter?
Yes. Yes. I'm
Motion
sorry.
carries 7-0. We are adjourned at 11:12.
Thank you, everyone, and particular thanks to Brian up there in the booth for hanging out and waiting so long with us.